Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Thank you everyone who is here today. We appreciate your community involvement. I want to go through the agenda for the night just in case you need to know that. At 6:15 p.m. we'll have municipal golf review by the staff. At 6:30 p.m. there'll be a presentation by golf participants. And then at 6:45 we will have public open comment, and I have your names here if you have signed up for public comment, and we will get to those kind of rules or expectations when we get to that piece. But first of all, most importantly, welcome. I will have the board members introduce themselves, starting from, and probably staff too, Mr. Woodman down there as well.
Good evening, I'm Paul Whitman, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Aaron Parish, Deputy City Administrator.
Mark Bilderbeck, Ward 4 Representative.
Dick Dale, 5th Ward Representative.
Vicki Anderson, Ward 3 Representative.
Linnea Archer, Park Board President.
Chad Raymaker, Ward 6 President, or Council Member.
I like it.
And Marty Cormack, Ward 1 Representative.
We also have several staff members here that can help with information if we need that as well. So thank you for being here again. So just expectations. We do want to hear from as many people as possible. So thank you for signing up. And just a reminder, as we're going through the presentations, just to remember and speakers to be courteous, whether we agree or disagree. That we're all here to hear people's opinions. And why don't we, and I think that's all we need to go through other than Paul before we get started.
We're ready to proceed.
Great.
Okay. Okay, looks like we're live. All right, I've already introduced myself, but I'm Paul Whitman, Director of Parks and Recreation. Welcome to this public hearing. I wanted to start out with a few comments about how we arrived at this point, and I'll start with just recent history. In our last park board meeting, the board directed us to coordinate this public hearing. We were hearing a lot of comments in our meetings about golf, and we wanted to provide this additional opportunity for engagement and feedback. This is not the only stop in our journey of getting feedback, and you'll hear more about that later in our presentation. We've done quite a few surveys up to this point. We have an additional statistically valid survey that is underway as we speak, so we'll get to those details later on. A lot of you are aware of the National Golf Foundation study that was complete in 21. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Many of you were at the council meeting last night. One of the council members talked about how this review of golf has stretched over a couple of city councils and a current and former city administrator. Council dating back I believe it was late 2018, started the conversation that led to the request for the review of golf operations. And the number one question that came up during the questions at that time was, are we sized right for Rochester? Is municipal golf sized right for the city of Rochester? So that was kind of the energy that was behind that. We laid out several other areas, and many of you have seen the report that we were asking for guidance from the Golf Foundation. And so that report was complete and presented to council late in 21. And from that discussion came a directive from council to Parks and Recreation Department, actually to the Park Board, to develop recommendations for golf. And just want to touch on those. The resolution outlined 3 options. The first one is to maintain the existing complement of courses and develop a strategy to fund the recommended $722,500 per year to support the capital improvement projects and the appropriate level of operating support. And it continues on. That number came from the report. There are other funding strategies that are talked about in the report. We highlight that one because it touched on all the major components from the report that need to be improved and to develop a sustainable operation. The next option was to optimize the Rochester Municipal Golf system by repositioning a course and evaluate the opportunities and challenges associated with repositioning each. Many of you know that in a previous park board meeting we did review options for repositioning at a very high level. And it talks about looking at future uses if that were to happen. And then the last option is to maintain the existing complement of courses with the current level of funding. We will develop later on just the challenges that would present. We have had a couple of good years in golf, but we have, there's folks in here, many who know many of the deficiencies we have in facilities and other areas that need capital investment. And so that would really push us into an area where we would need to work within our history of funding. If that's the way we look forward, we'd have to really make some changes in the level of service of the way we deliver golf. And so those were the 3 the framework of options that council directed through a resolution back in February for the board to bring forward. We're going to talk about the progress in working with the board in getting to that point where we come forward to the to the city council with a recommendation from the board. Just like to say, many of you were at the council meeting last night. You could probably look at these recommendations and gather the feedback as to the desire of individual council members. There was no action taken at that meeting. I will say we do have a lot of information and community engagement, community feedback that we've yet to get in front of the board. We will continue with that process. And that's part of the process is you gathering this evening, and we look forward to your comments later on. And I'll now turn it over to Aaron Parish.
All right, good evening. I'm Deputy Administrator Aaron Parish, and I'm just going to go a little bit deeper on some of the feedback we'll be getting around the financial options. And so, as Paul said, we have the 3 options, which is maintain and develop a strategy to fund. That's the invest option. We have the optimize option, which could mean repositioning a course. And then we have the maintain the existing level of funding, which really is a neglect option, because if we do what we're doing today, progressively over time, the courses will deteriorate. I mean, they're subject to ongoing needs, and I want to try to highlight some of those. A little bit different than what you saw in the National Golf Foundation report, but we've developed an option for the invest option. That this is important. This is what we're getting feedback on, trying to understand people's preferences. But we have to be good stewards of this asset if we're going to maintain 1 course, 2 courses, 3 courses, or 4 courses, and they all have ongoing needs. However, we acknowledge and realize that the levels of funding that were outlined in the National Golf Foundation report probably not sustainable right now. And so what this represents is incremental progress, gives the opportunity for the park board and the council to consider what might more of a middle of the road option. This is feedback we took on some of the earlier engagement and stakeholder groups that were meeting and tried to work that in. Now, we're suggesting here that in perpetuity, ongoing, that we need $500,000 in order to support the courses at a pretty basic level. We know we have very contemporary needs, whether that be the Eastwood Clubhouse, the drive at Northern. We'll have irrigation needs. We have a number of clubhouses, and they take ongoing investment and needs. And so I want to dispel the notion that this is a short-term idea, because this requires long-term stewardship. So really want to lean into that. Now, with that being said, the $500,000 we're talking about in this recommendation, 400 of that would go to CIP, capital improvements that are needed in the system, and 100,000 for operations. We know that if we don't invest in the capital or create a good user experience, we're going to continue to decline, and we'll be at meetings like this again in the future. So we need to develop strategies that make sense. And then ultimately, like a lot of things, it really depends on what are the best options to pay for this. So we have 3 ideas we're going to put in front of the community. One is 100% tax levy supported. That's just to say the city council can make the decision ultimately to levy for this. If we were going to levy $500,000 additional, that would be about 0.5, 0.6% increase on our levy. That doesn't sound like a lot, but you're competing with 100% of the needs of the city, whether it be parks, library, public safety, etc. This last night, the council adopted their budget at 6.85%, and that's a significant increase in the levy. And so, again, very competitive to get levy dollars. But everybody, it's a community. This model says it's a community asset. Everybody pays. Switching way over to the other extreme of the idea would say, let's enact some form of surcharge on each round or some variation of that idea that says the users of the system will support that $500,000 of additional need. That would require a surcharge of $5.20 per round. So, you'd have your per play membership or your full pay, or you'd have your season passes. Each one of those would be surcharged $5.20 per round. However, the users, the beneficiaries primarily of the system, end up paying in that model. And then, like all things, you can split the baby. You can take the Solomonic approach and say we'll go half one way and half the other, and have a 0.29% tax levy increase to fund half of that $250,000 need, and then you could say a $2.60 per round charge. And that's just splitting and recognizing the balance between users and the public value of the overall system. But again, I want to just give you a little bit of a sense of the scale of the system here. And this will sound a little bit unusual, but if we were to just not have golf period in Rochester right now, and we were to say we want to build these 4 courses, we would think it would take $43 million to build all 4 courses plus the clubhouses. We've consulted some data. GolfSpan is one source that says a course of our quality would be $7 to $14 million to construct without any clubhouses. And you can see different examples. So I wanted to just give you a scale. If we were RPU, and RPU, of course, is our electric utility, and they depreciate their assets, and we have a tendency not to do that for parks, and we have a tendency not to do that for things in the general fund. But if we were RPU and running like a business, and we did straight line depreciation, even if we were thinking we needed to reinvest at a 50-year level, which is a way out there kind of level, it's not the normal amortization period you'd see at something like this, that would say you should be investing $862,000 per year. 30 years often could be more normal if you need to replace greens, you need to redo irrigation, you need to redo buildings. That would be $1.4 million per year. Now you could go to 100 years on this model and say, well, then now that's $431,000 per year. I mean, you can talk about the needs, but we have not been investing at this level for a year. Quite frankly, I think you'll hear later, our average annual CIP investment is $60,000. That's just simply not enough to sustain this system. And so if we want to have 4 courses, we need to rethink what we're doing from a financial perspective, and it needs to make sense from a policy perspective. So I just wanted to give that little bit of level setting, because this really is about a conversation about long-term stewardship of something that we clearly is valued by the community. So this is the invest option. We previously have talked at other meetings about what the reposition options look like. We won't go deep into that tonight. And then really just thinking about what are our strategies and what are our next steps from an engagement perspective. but I'm going to just invite Director Whitman back up to chat. We wanted to normalize a little bit of a few data points here, give you a sense of what's coming out of our audit, and then normalize sort of the use of the facilities, and Paul's going to walk through those for you.
Thank you, Aaron. We've had a lot of questions about rounds played and comparing 9-hole rounds to 18-hole rounds. With help of Heather Heyer, who's here this evening, we normalized the rounds, and basically we counted 9-hole rounds as a 0.5 and 18-hole as 1, just to give a sense of what the activity looks like on all the courses. And yellow is Soldiers Field, the light blue is Northern Hills, and dark blue is Eastwood. Just to give you a sense year to year over the past several years what rounds played looks like. 2016 was a great year. You can see that Mr. Gorman and Mr. Richardson, who are here tonight, promised me every year following that would look like that or better. And I should have questioned back then. But no, a lot of the, as you know, ups and downs in golf, there's weather is always a factor. You can see, you remember the late springs and rain throughout some of these down years, that's where that's coming from. I just wanted to point out the past 2 years, 3 years, 2020, 21, those were our COVID years. You all recall golf was one of the only things you could do in organized sports back in March, or I think we got open back up in April, May 2020, and golf just took off. So we have, one of the questions we have, is that going to sustain over the years? Was that a COVID blip, or did we get enough golfers back on the courses to look like we were looking those 2 years and back in 2016? Just wanted to share that for your information. Now, in addition to rounds played, our revenue expense is a big factor in the decision making, as Aaron pointed out. Just let me explain for those who may, in the back, may not be able to see all the bars on that graph. The red, well, let's start out with green. That is our, that's the revenue base from all of you. That's your fees, charges, your memberships, your greens fees. The dark blue is our expenses, and then the red is if we go beyond our tax revenue and have a deficit, that's what the red is. Now within the column on the left, the light blue, that is the tax levy that supports golf. That is our subsidy that supports golf. So you can see we've had some lean years with that subsidy over the past few years, and it's varied anywhere from $136,000 up to $240,000. And then if you look at the red, we have had some deficits as large as $155,000. And if you add the tax levy to that, the total investment just in operations for that year was $320,000. So that gets to some of the questions that came from council. If we look at 13 through 2020, and then you look at all the capital needs we have, it's, and Aaron mentioned this, it is impossible to sustain golf without further investment. So that is, we just wanted to share that. Now, why I love looking at our old park board minutes, and I looked at the minutes from when Soldiers Field Golf Course, I believe it was the year it opened. It was 36 when the course was expanded. A round of golf was 50 cents back then, and I'm sure everybody here would love to have those prices. Why do we have to have a price structure? And while other activities that the parks provides are free of charge, other than the tax levy. And this graph here kind of shows that the things that are 100% tax supported are designed to benefit the entire community. Our parks, our trails, and picnic shelters. And then as you climb up that tier, youth-focused programming such as First Tee, that is not 100% subsidized by the fees that are raised. It's the course itself is provided, other amenities are provided to support that program, and other programs throughout the community. And then we get higher and higher until we get to the highly individual benefits such as golf, and that is where we're looking for more of a partnership in the sense that we're looking to recover as much of the cost as possible through fees and charges. And I'm going to turn the time over to Jenna Bowman. She is our Communications and Engagement Director for the city, and we're going to talk about some of the marketing strategies we have moving forward.
Good evening, everyone. As Paul shared, I'm Jenna Bowman. I'm the City Strategic Communications Engagement Director. I am not housed within Parks. I have the great privilege of working across the organization, including with the Parks Department. So I know one thing that has been brought up that I just wanted to highlight is the opportunity for additional marketing. This has been a conversation. Jeff and I talked a little bit yet this year, but really the piece of it already looking to next year. Just wanted to highlight a couple specific things, that there would be intention to increase the amount of marketing for municipal golf, and that would be a partnership with myself and fellow teammates along with the department and specifically the golf team. You've seen some of the photos. I'll highlight them here just in a second, but we've already been out to the courses this year. Surprisingly, right, or maybe not surprisingly, we have not had a set of photos of the courses. So the basic sense for those who've given feedback, both on web presence and just in general marketing, we're a step ahead already, and some really great photos. I think there's probably easily 50 to 100 that we've captured at each of the courses. Some of you may be in some of them. As well as some of the basics, right? So we talked about having access to usable logos. If we have graphic designers in the audience, you know the importance of having files that you can use and for various purposes. So we'll be looking at basics of ensuring that we have those usable graphic files. Things like promotional videos for each courses, and then with the plan that we are coordinating a marketing plan for the collective courses, so not just focusing on each, but all four of them, and utilizing our social media channels, both paid and unpaid, as well as paid channels between radio, TV, and print. So that's all to say we wanted to highlight that in the context of already looking to next year. So again, I won't belabor this, but just wanted to pull out a few of the photos that we took. We worked with a local photographer and highlighting the various courses that we have. And this is a part 2 of that ongoing commitment to putting our best foot forward. You know, we know that you can utilize a certain level of media for a certain number of years, and then you want to continue to reinvest. But I think a lot of really great opportunity with the marketing. And so then just wanting to highlight, as already identified, this is a step in the engagement process and what was asked of us through the City Council resolution. One of those things also included a statistically significant survey. We mentioned, I think, in the last meeting that we are working with Minnesota-based provider Morris Leatherman. They're based in Minneapolis. They conduct their surveys by phone. There will be 500 community members randomly selected. We are taking into consideration, Peter, who's our contact there, is aware of our percentage of golfers, so we will over sample with the intention that the survey, the randomized sample, is reaching U.S. golfers. That said, we know that we have obviously a lot more people in this community than 500, so we will be offering an opt-in survey through Polko, which is an online platform that we use. So just want to make sure that there's an awareness that there will be both the statistically significant survey that's being invested in, as well as that opt-in opportunity. The timing on that, we anticipate those phone calls starting to be made here in September, going into early October, and then that opt-in survey taking place in October. And then hopefully you've seen some of the information. We are planning to be out at the courses starting tomorrow at Northern Hills. You'll see a lot of what we're, planning to engage with those of you who may be there or those who cannot be there, could be here tonight, asking very similar, questions and feedback on what Mr. Parish had covered in terms of, the funding piece of it. I believe most all of you have picked up the comment card. We did print another group of those off, so if you did not get one of those when you came in, you are welcome to submit that. You did not have to speak tonight in terms of public comment. You could use that instead, as well as you are still welcome to provide written comment by way of email, dropping something off, or sending it into the Parks Department. So that's just a quick highlight of the engagement next steps. And I'll just cover this since I'm standing up here unless someone wants to beat me up here. Just as far as recapping, so what's next? We are working to have all of the engagement done and wrapped up and prepared for the Park Board for their November 1st Park Board meeting. As well as then the Park Board, the hope and intention would be that they're providing their recommendation to the City Council at the November 21st City Council study session. So that's generally the direction that we're headed in terms of timing. Paul, I'll turn it back over to you.
That concludes our presentation. So.
Thank you. And now we have a golf presentation from Larry Mortensen.
Thank you. I have a number of comments to make as I go through this presentation. However, I wanted to start with a little story. When I was a kid, I can remember my father saying, "Larry, you can't fight City Hall." And so I'm going to present some stuff today that might be opposing City Hall. My name is Larry Mortensen. I'm a past member of the Park Board and an avid golfer. This presentation was developed by a number of people in this room. Jenny Anderson. Jenny, are you here? There she is. Jenny is an avid golfer who plays all of the city courses. Rodney Dretch, who is an active golfer with a strong tie to Soldiers Field. I don't believe Rodney is with us tonight. Ken Grazzini. Ken is over here. Ken is a champion golfer. He is a board member of the Minnesota Golf Association and a past president of that board. Skip Hambright, I know, is here. Skip is an active golfer. He is a member of the board of the Minnesota Golf Association, and Skip is the coordinator of the First Tee program at Hadley Creek. And Danelle Olson, I know Danelle is here as well. Danelle is an avid and champion golfer. I'm going to start with some facts regarding golf, and they might be a little different than what we've already heard, but it's a different perspective, as simple as that. More people play golf than any of the other sporting activities sponsored by Parks and Recreation. We've had some facts about rounds of golf played. Rounds of golf played in Minnesota have grown significantly over the last 3 years. It turns out that golf is a sport that is growing. Rochester rounds played at the city courses have increased yearly over the past 3 years. Golf rounds played in Minnesota have grown by 14% from 20 to 2021, and nationally golf rounds have also increased. And the source of that information is the source of our city study, the National Golf Foundation, and the Minnesota Golf Association. The rounds of golf played in Rochester city courses has already been presented by Paul. I'm going to present it in a different way. They've grown from 93,500 in 2019 to 98,000 in 2020 and 112,000 in 2021. The rounds played by golf was pretty much equal to the rounds averaged by other Minnesota golf courses presented in the previous slide. Here's one thing that you might want to think about. Typically, a round of golf takes about 4 hours. So 112,000 rounds of golf equates to 448,000 hours of outdoor recreation. Think about that. Rochester Park and Rec offers the nationally known youth program called First Tee at Hadley Creek each summer. Our First Tee program has grown over the years, and in 2022 the program hosted 300 children this summer, ages 7 to 17. The Rochester First Tee program is amongst the largest in the state of Minnesota. Golf is the largest revenue-generating business unit within Parks and Recreation, generating $1.7 million of revenue last year. Golf is one of the lowest users of taxpayer dollars of subsidies. In our budget this year, $158,000 for 2022. That's lower than the rec center, that's lower than pools, that's lower than the city maintenance for street grass. The National Golf Foundation, now I'm going to speak about the National Golf Foundation study for a few minutes. And this is kind of a repeat of what we've already heard. In 2019, the City Council requested a study of municipal golf. The National Golf Foundation was selected to complete that study, and unfortunately that study was delayed due to the pandemic that occurred in 2020. The staff of the National Golf Foundation came to Rochester in August of 2021 to complete site visitation and gather facts. The City Council, the final report from the NGF study was presented to the City Council in November, and the City Council discussed it at a study session in January of 2022, and the Council accepted the report in February of 2022. Some people might not like what I have to say next. Unfortunately, the National Golf Foundation study got mixed in with and intertwined with the long-term planning process for Soldiers Field Park as a whole. The Soldiers Field Master Plan. The study included impact of reducing or closing Soldiers Field Golf Course. The city staff presented some follow-up work back in July, as noted earlier. They talked about the potential land use for our golf courses, and funding considerations also presented just briefly earlier. A large number of the golfing community have expressed concern regarding the reduction or closure of Soldiers Field Golf Course. A petition opposing this action was presented to the mayor and forwarded to Park and Rec leadership. Letters of concern have been published in the local newspaper. Many members of the golfing community have spoken at the open comment periods for the park board, and a request to form a feedback group of golf community has been made both in writing and verbally to the Park and Rec leadership and the park board. Haven't heard from them yet. So out of frustration, this small group I just introduced of golfers got together and completed an extensive review of the National Golf Foundation study. Now, the study is a very good study. It's professional, it's complete, it was a wonderful review of city golf. Our group identified a number of points of agreement and disagreement with the study analysis and recommendations. Here are our points of agreement. The current operating structure is appropriate. It's a mix of concessions for the golf shops, food and beverage operations, and city staff to maintain the golf courses. This operational structure is common for municipal golf courses. Golf is understaffed, both from the daily operations of the facilities and the maintenance of the golf courses. The daily fees for golf are appropriate and consistent with the local market. Season pass fees are low. Season pass holders have unlimited golfing privileges. The point of sale system known as Rec Track is not a good fit for golf operations, and it's slow and lacks flexibility. The web presence for the city golf is poor. And sounds like we're going to make that better. That's a good thing. Today, if you want to look for some of the golf courses, the web pages are buried inside city park and recreation web pages. It's hard to find them. The clubhouse at Eastwood is 50 years old and is in need of replacements. Efforts should be made to strengthen the social media presence of the golf and marketing of city golf. We agree. Most of the golf courses open to the public have features on their web pages that allow for making tee times online. This should be explored and would be more convenient to the golfing public and save operational staff time. Points of disagreement with the National Golf Foundation study. The study uses a number of national standards to compare our operation to other golf courses. Examples include revenue per course, rounds played per course. The golf season in Minnesota is typically 6 months. It's difficult to compare our performance with golf facilities that are open year-round or 9 months a year. Our performance measures do not compare well with these national standards. Some of the course-by-course financial analysis in this study indicates that courses lose money. However, these analyses do not include the revenue from season pass fees and are, quite frankly, misleading. And this point is actually made clear in the National Golf Foundation report. The NGF study does point out that their fees increases, if they are made as recommended, would place city golf at a break-even or positive financial performance position. The National Golf study makes a number of capital investment recommendations in their report. It needs to be shared that many of these recommendations have been either completed or are in process or are covered by other programs such as the Equipment Revolving Program, or are simply just not needed. The city administrators probably know this better than I do, but this is my view. The city uses a funding process to pay for the improvements and additions of city assets. The funding process is termed CIP, or Capital Improvement Projects. CIP funding is part of the annual city budgeting process. The funding for CIP initiatives comes from property taxes and other city revenue. In 2022, the total CIP funding for the city is $105 million. The CIP funding for for parks and recreation is $6 million of that $105 million. And oh boy, the 2022 CIP funding for golf is $75,000. Golf CIP funding has averaged $64,000 over a time period from 2002 through 2022. The point is that golf does not require a large amount of CIP funding. Our group is recommending these 4 capital improvement projects to be completed and funded via the CIP program. Fix the entrance road and damaged portions of the parking lot at Northern Hills. Repair the maintenance building at Northern Hills Golf Course. Replace the golf clubhouse at Eastwood. It's a 50-year-old building. This is also recommended by the National Golf Foundation study, and it suggests that a new facility would potentially increase revenue given that Eastwood is considered the premier golf course in the system. And then complete the automation of the irrigation system at Soldiers Field. Completing these 4 projects will require CIP funding of $2.5 million spread over 5 years. This compares to the National Golf Foundation study recommendations of $3.6 million over the same period. This chart's a little complicated. In this chart, the blue line, which is down towards the bottom, represents the average CIP funding for golf from 2002 to 2022 at $64,000. The red line represents the CIP funding suggested by city staff at the July meeting that covers the NGF recommendations at $850,000 per year. The green bar represents our recommendations spread over a 5-year period of time, with CIP dollars in 2023 at $390,000, in 2024 $590,000, in 2025 $590,000, in 2026 $840,000, in 2027 $140,000, and in 2028 and beyond for 25 years, a $50,000 reserve contingency to address any unexpected major system failures or unexpected weather damage. You can see there is a short-term spike in funding. However, once completed, the long-term funding needs will fall significantly and remain low for many years. As noted earlier in an earlier slide, the Park and Rec Department CIP budget is several $1 million, $6 million in this year. Some reprioritization should be completed among the many CIP projects within Park and Rec so that no additional dollars from taxpayers is needed to complete these golf projects. I'm going to get more feedback from this one, I'm sure. The National Golf Foundation study notes that the season pass rates are low. Their recommendation is to increase the season pass fee at a minimum of 6% annually. And many of you in this room know this. The season pass holder may play any of the 4 city golf courses as frequently as they choose. The National Golf Study points out that for golfers who play many rounds of golf during the season, the cost per round becomes a very deep discount when compared to the daily rate. The season pass rates at other Minnesota locations that offer multiple courses are much higher. The adult season pass rate in Rochester is $795. The season pass in St. Paul for Como Park and Highland Park course is $1,550. In Minneapolis, the season pass for 3 courses is $1,600. And in Ramsey County, for 3 courses, the rate is $1,600. This proposed model will gradually increase the adult season pass fee over a 5-year period of time, 12% in 2023, 10% in 2024, 8% in 2025, 6% in 2026 and 27. In the long run, this will increase the annual revenue for golf by $350,000 per year. Given the financial performance of golf in the last 2 years of having a revenue surplus, this will allow for the addition of staff to maintain the golf courses and support the golf operation without the need for taxpayer dollars. Some of our golf community members may grumble a little bit about having a season pass fee increase, but privately they will admit they are getting a great deal. And deep down they will also admit paying a little more for a season pass will allow for improved course conditions, which will be a good thing. The future of Soldiers Field Golf Course. So this slide was originally, the original title was The Elephant in the Room, but after yesterday's meeting I kind of had to adjust that a little bit. The National Golf Foundation does not recommend closing or reducing Soldiers Field Golf Course. There is a section in that report that does address the impact of that action. And it's interesting because the language in the report starts with, should you choose to close or reduce Soldiers Field, and then goes on to say other things. At the City Council study session yesterday, the Council's reaction to the Soldiers Field Master Plan included a message that Soldiers Field Golf Course should remain at 18 holes as it stands today. Yeah. pointed out earlier in the presentation show that golf participation is growing. And clearly the population of Rochester and the surrounding area is growing. I want to give my sincere thanks to Jenny Anderson, Deb Gary, Rod Dretch, Ken Grzini, Skip Ambright, and Danelle Olson for their voluntary commitment to the significant amount of time and energy it took to create this presentation. It would be my hope that members of the golfing community will extend thanks to these people as well. These are my closing personal comments. These are not from the group that put together that presentation. It was my honor to sit at your table as a member of the Park Board from 2009 through 2017 and to serve as the Park Board President from 2015 to 2017. It was a special time in my life being able to serve our community on this board. Here's some feedback. Feedback to the Park and Recreation leadership. The process of presenting and responding to the NGF study and intertwining it with the Soldiers Field Master Plan has been confusing at best to the golfing community. Feedback to the board during open comment periods left unanswered. Messages to Park and Recreation leadership and the Park Board left unanswered. This has led to a great deal of frustration in the golfing community. The golfing community is the largest recreation population supported by Park and Rec. They pay for their recreation. They are actively volunteering to enhance our golf courses. The golf community deserves better support than what we have so far received.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate your time and commitment to our city and those that work with Mr. Mortensen as well. So we are to the open comment period. I'm going to run through how that's going to work. We have 45 minutes dedicated to open comments. Park Board here everybody has stated that if we need to go longer, we will. With that, and that's of course because we want to hear from you, and this is the time that we have set aside to do that. So with that, we want to make sure that the most voices are heard tonight and the most diverse ideas, especially those who have, we'd like to hear from those who have ideas on how to address the capital needs to sustain our 4 courses. So how this is going to work is you have signed up on a sheet. We'll be calling your name from the list. I'll be calling your name from the list, and I apologize when I butcher some of your names. Please, when you get to the microphone, state your name correctly for the community. You'll have 4 minutes. There will be a timer, so you can see how long you have. We'd like you to stick to those 4 minutes so it gives other people the most opportunity to speak as well. We are on this first open comment period. We are talking about golf specifically, and it can be about any of the 4 courses, but we welcome all of your ideas. I am going to queue up the next speaker, so I'm going to give you an example. Jeff Fritz Junker is going to be speaking first. Hopefully I said that right. But I'm going to call a couple names after that so that we know, so we're not spending a lot of time waiting for the next person to be called up. So I'll call a couple names at a time, and you can either come stand up here or come sit up front so that you're ready to go when it's your turn. When you get up to the microphone, please state your name. You'll have 4 minutes. If you go over that, I'll ask you politely to kind of wrap it up so we can get to our next speaker. Most importantly, and some of you have been to study set or open hearings like this, we really want to hear all the new ideas. So if you have something to say that's been said before, we still encourage you to speak, but say something like, I agree with the previous speaker who said this. So then we know that there's multiple people who agree with that, but then we can get onto your novel ideas or additional ideas. So that helps us save time so we don't hear the same thing over and over again, but then we also know there's 20 people who agree with the same thing. So something like, I agree with the previous speaker who said this, or I agree with the need to have this idea. So then as a board, we know that there are lots of people with that same information. There was, however, a problem with the sign up. So there's ones that say Soldiers Field Master Park Plan, saving those for later. There's one that said municipal golf, and there's two that said nothing at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on those who signed up on the municipal golf, and then I will get to the sheets that say nothing on them in this order. But if you were signed up to speak for the Soldiers Field Master Plan, just state that and I'll move you to that list for that public hearing. Any other comments from the board before we get started? Okay, so Mr. Fritz Junker, you're up first, and then it'll be Avery Meyer and Peggy G. So if you guys could come forward and be ready as well.
Hello, my name is Jeff Fritz Junker. First of all, I want to thank the Park Board for having us here, and you mentioned you want to hear input, and I really hope that you do, because the common perception amongst golfers I know is you've already made up your mind that something we're not going to like. So appreciate you listening. Larry, you took almost all my points on my notes, so I agree with everything Larry just said, for sure. State that. I've been in Rochester for 34 years, and I played golf in Rochester for 34 years. I'm a member of Northern Hills Men's Club, a long-term season pass holder, and I'm also the Lure JV golf coach the last couple of years. I'm a true avid golfer in the city of Rochester. I think Rochester public golf is one of the greatest things about the city of Rochester, I really tell. It's one of the reasons I lived here for 34 years. We just love the golf course community here. The people on the courses are fantastic. It's just one of the best things around. In my city where I grew up, we had one country club. I could never play golf because I wasn't in that country club. In fact, I couldn't afford it. Those of you who play golf with me know that's why you're not any good now, right? You can't start when you're young. So anyway, I believe firmly we should invest in golf in the city of Rochester. We should grow the game of golf in Rochester. I think it was embarrassing that we spend $35,000 a year in capital improvements on golf in Rochester. That stat, I think, blew all of us away, how low that number was for the amount of golf played in the city of Rochester. If we're going to grow it by 55,000 people in the next 25 years, we need to grow the game of golf, not reduce the game of golf in Rochester for sure. So don't even consider shutting down Soldiers Field golf course. That would be ridiculous. I do spend a lot of time in the spring helping coach young men play the game of golf, and that's kind of my passion. We need to grow that as an option. I see a lot of kids that are on their cell phones and they're not playing sports, right? Let's get the kids outdoors and increase that 500,000 hours of leisure time in the city golf by providing the golf facilities our city needs. I really think there's two things we should invest a lot in Rochester. Like the speaker mentioned, we only play golf here 6 months a year, right? So when it gets to be April and everybody wants to get out and play golf, there's so much enthusiasm for golf in the city of Rochester after getting pent up in cold weather for 6 months. And we all want to go play golf. And the courses are packed, right? We have high school golfers, which is fantastic. It is really hard to get tee times, especially in the spring. So we need to increase, right? Not decrease our golf courses. There's two things I think we should spend a lot of money in Rochester: snowplows and golf courses. That is Rochester, Minnesota. I'm totally okay with paying more for the game of golf, right? They talk about the 50-50 option, increasing the season householder fees. I'm totally fine with that. I think almost all golfers are okay with making up the difference by increasing the fees slightly. I think the city of Rochester should also pay part of that, because you never know who's going to be the next golfer. My wife just started picking up golf a little bit more the last couple of years. She never was, but now she's getting to that point, right? We want other people to join the golf community. They may not be joining paying now, but they will later on. So I think they should pay a little bit as well. I want to leave you one story here about just golf in the city of Rochester. I played a few weeks ago at Soldiers Field because the other courses were packed. Right? There was a tournament, I think, at Northern, and Eastwood was full for all the tee times. So I decided to go walk on at Soldiers Field, like I do quite a bit. And I met this guy, Matt Wyoming. Right? Matt was a guy in his mid-30s. He was playing along with, we walked 18 holes of golf. And his wife is here at Mayo Clinic because she was 32 years old and just had a stroke. And the guy was kind of bummed about it. And he'd been here for a week, and what he really needed was some respite, right? And by having a chance to walk 4 blocks from his hotel to Sodersville Golf Course and play around the golf meant so much to that guy, right? Because he was distressed big time about his 32-year-old wife that was in Mayo Clinic, right? That is an unbelievable thing we have to offer for the downtown community and people that come to Mayo, right? We want to be an open community and help people like Matt that was here from home just to get out and chance to play a little bit of golf. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And then if Kathy Gregory could come up while Avery's coming to speak.
My name is Avery Meyer. I'm the captain for the Mayo Girls Golf Team and a coach for the First Tee program. I wanted to bring forth the importance of city courses from the perspective of a high school golfer and a former First Tee participant. So, during the spring season, we use the city courses daily between the girls and the boys golf teams. During the past year, these teams include Mayo, Century, John Marshall, Lourdes, and Byron. At Hadley, modifying or getting rid of the driving range, for example, would create problems for teams like Lourdes, Century, and Byron because most of their teams practice on the range there. This would also cause them to move to a different driving range, such as Northern Hills or Eastwood. At Eastwood, the range and practice greens are filled with both the Mayo girls, boys, Century boys, and the public. Adding another team to the range would take away our practice time and ability to practice because of how busy it would be. And my next part is about First Tee. So when I was 7 years old, my parents signed me up for the First Tee so I could learn to golf and so I could go with my great-grandfather. As I kept taking the sessions, not only did I learn to golf, but I learned life lessons and values that connected me to the First Tee program. During the program, I looked up to the coaches and wanted to be a coach one day and give what I learned to a new generation of golfers. Now as a coach, I'm seeing myself in these kids as they learn the game. Without Hadley Creek driving range paired with the practice facility, the First Tee program would not be able to grow anymore because the range with practice greens is essential to the program and what it teaches. Using a range at another facility wouldn't be possible because they wouldn't have the practice facilities that Hadley does that makes beginners comfortable. And I have a story similar to Jeff's at Soldiers Field. And lastly, over the 8 years that I've been playing, I've been paired up with many interesting people. Many of those people have had loved ones that were in Mayo as patients. One particular pairing was from a father and son. The pair was from Texas, and they were here due to a rare cancer condition that the son was being treated for. The son was 15 years old and played high school golf, but due to the chemotherapy he was under, he was only able to have enough energy to ride along the cart. With Soldiers Field being so accessible from the clinic, the course was able to provide an outlet that was needed to create a memory for both his father and the son. And my conclusion is, golf is a sport that breaks generational barriers that no other sport can. Thank you for your time.
As Kathy's making her way, Jeff Meyer, you're after Kathy.
So my name is Peggy, and I have been a member of the Rochester community since 1978. So I've been here a long time and value the park and rec system, and I agree with people's perspectives on the golf courses as they currently are. My family are avid golfers. I do try to golf on occasion, but I would not say I'm an avid golfer. But I do appreciate the game, and I think that I would like to see all 4 courses in the city be maintained as they currently are, because they all have unique aspects to them. They are in different parts of the city, so they are accessible to different groups of residents. which I think is important that they are spread throughout. One thing with Hadley, I agree with the speaker before me, how important the First Tee program is. And there were 450 youth that were participated this year, and which is wonderful. And they teach core values such as honesty, integrity, sportsmanship, respect, confidence, responsibility, perseverance, courtesy, and judgment. So those are wonderful aspects to have our youth be brought up with. And as far as Soldiers Field, there was an article on the 17th of this month. Somebody spoke to the history of the course, and I don't like to see Rochester's history be destroyed or altered, and I would like to see it maintained. And I am a healthcare provider, and I know that many of the patients that I care for utilize the beautiful city course when they're visiting our community. And as far as Northern Hills, we've already invested in a new clubhouse, and I think so that is something we've already put into that. And then Eastwood Golf Course, they have an extraordinary 18 holes. The community there, they do a lot for the upkeep of the grounds, a lot of volunteers, and I can't say enough about that. And also that area is used for winter sports. They do cross-country skiing there. So I think we can utilize some of those, what we have for golf courses, other times other than the 6 months when we're able to golf. And as far as looking, I went to a meeting in July and saw the master plan for Soldiers Field, and it looked like they were going to get rid of it, and I was very upset about that, which I don't usually get too emotional, but so I wanted to speak today and have my voice be heard. I didn't feel like all the community members in Rochester really knew about this happening, and I questioned how some of that was presented, and I'm happy to see all these people here to support the golf. And thank you for listening.
And then Nick Miller will be after Jeff Meyer.
Hi, my name is Kathy Gregory. I actually am only a several-year resident of Rochester. I moved here from Oregon several years ago in the middle of COVID. I was lucky enough to get hooked up with somebody in one of the women's leagues, and so I now play in multiple women's leagues here in town. And it was the one thing that kept me sane during COVID, beside my grandson. So golf has many, many benefits, more than what you might think. A healthy senior population is vital to Rochester's success. According to 2020 census data, 19.88% of adults in Rochester are senior citizens, 1 in 5 adults. Healthy seniors serve many roles in Rochester. Sitting in line for Meals on Wheels food pickup shows me very clearly who many of these volunteers are. Older, retired folks. We are the ones who now have the time, the money for gas, a dependable car with insurance, and can pass a background check. They loved me as a retired teacher. I'd already been retired. We must also be physically able to carry items upstairs and trudge through snowy, slick sidewalks. In 2020, volunteers delivered 51,132 meals to older adults and persons with disabilities. Based on my observations, 90% or more Meals on Wheels drivers are retired older folks. In addition to Meals on Wheels, Family Service Rochester coordinates 600 plus volunteers who transport clients to medical appointments, grocery shopping, haircuts, etc. They also shovel driveways, sidewalks, clean houses, move furniture, mow lawns, and so much more. Channel 1 is another local organization which relies heavily on volunteers, again, many of whom are retired seniors. Channel 1 serves a multi-generational population who are food insecure. and as we know, their client base has continued to expand through COVID. Without these physically able volunteers, Channel 1 would struggle to serve a fragile population here in Rochester. According to Independent Sector, a volunteer resource, Minnesota's volunteer time is valued at $32.22 per hour. If the city had to pay Meals on Wheels drivers, based on 1.5 hours per day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks in a year, they would need to find an additional $229,000 per year in the city budget just for the Meals on Wheels program. Add in the various Family Service Rochester and Channel 1 programs, that number could easily triple or quadruple. As we get older, the list of physical activities available to us dwindles as knees, shoulders, and hips give out and are replaced. Golf is one of those activities we can enjoy to a very advanced age. In fact, there are a number of 80 and 90-year-olds still golfing every week at Rochester City courses. Many of them walk their rounds, specifically at Soldiers Field. The absence of severe elevation changes and a level walking surface makes Soldiers Field a safe and enjoyable place for them to walk while golfing. The walkability of Soldiers Field also explains why it has the lowest revenue of the city courses. People walk instead of renting carts. It's that simple. Walking the course also helps build muscle strength, improve cardiovascular function, and increases endurance. The added benefit of golf over simply walking involves the golf swing. The swing itself promotes core muscle strength, builds muscles in the chest, back, and forearms. Golf encourages strategic thinking, keeps us connected with friends outside the home, and is a great way to keep our brains fit. Rochester has such a unique opportunity with the city golf courses to encourage and enable senior good health. Your support for all of our city courses, specifically Soldiers Field, is necessary for Rochester's success.
Mark Reeder will be after Nick.
Good evening. Everybody hear me okay? In looking at different portions of the golf community throughout, Jeff Meyer, sorry, apologies. In looking at different portions of the golf community throughout Minnesota, it becomes quickly apparent that there's been a significant bump in popularity. But you have to look for it. A lot of times, most popular things are not always visual at first glance. As we move throughout the city, there are abundant soccer fields, baseball diamonds, tennis courts, and golf courses. On any given day, passing by those different facilities, which do you see the most participation on a weekday morning, weekday afternoon, or on the weekend for that matter? It would be the golf courses. It seems to present a contradiction in terms of what popularity and usage means, especially considering the reasons why we're here today. Everyone would agree that those facilities are significantly important to grow the popularity of the game and also the youth of the game. With any sport, you would agree that facilities are significantly important for all of this growth, but they have to be affordable, accessible, as well as well kept. You need practice facilities, and you need a proportion of funding to actually make sure that all of that takes place. There are many articles that have come out about the Minneapolis metropolitan area talking about an influx in youth participation in golf. They are expanding facilities to be able to accommodate those challenges. There are not enough teachers. The capacity has been further complicated because golf is not just a sport for the youth or for anyone, it's for everyone. As there is development of youth golfers, there's abundant opportunity for individual competition through Junior PGA or through high school golf. Junior PGA is a competitive golf organization that has the participation of thousands of young boys and girls throughout the country. In our own community, both Soldiers Field and Northern Hills is home to competitive tournaments that happen throughout the summer. And individuals from rural areas, Rochester, and also the cities, the Twin Cities, come together and golf competitively and learn from each other in those areas. Understanding how the state of Minnesota works, trends start in the Twin Cities and they spread to the surrounding areas. This last year, statewide participation in junior PGA was up another 7% over 2021. Even with more tournaments added, there was very large turnout for participation within Southeast Minnesota competitions, creating a situation where there was not just a few tournaments that had waitlisted individuals, but there were a lot of tournaments that waitlisted individuals. The high school golf teams are already crowded in facilities where teams are rushed and practices are stunted due to the time constraints and facility limitations. With the increase in popularity, Rochester would be seen as moving backwards rather than forwards in what state and national trends are showing. Diminishing the usage of Soldiers Field and other golf courses would decrease the usability and ability for youth competitions to take place. It would also create even more competition for space, which would effectively limit the growth and competitiveness with other metro areas. Any changes to municipal golf courses will cause irreversible harm to multiple facets of the community where you might not see it at first glance.
After Mark will be Mike Terwishchuk.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Miller, and I also ended up moving to Rochester from Oregon a couple years ago, so must be some sort of trend. And also, I mean, so my wife joined Mayo as staff. I have a young daughter. We live in the Soldiers Field neighborhood. And I guess when I look at this conversation as a new resident, I find that Rochester is really exciting and how some of the things are changing and improving and growing, and part of the population growth is that as we reimagine how our city amenities, our parks can be used. And that's what brought me to Rochester. Besides a great facility at Mayo, it was the amazing city that we live in. And at the same time, when I look at the downtown area, I see so little green space. Many surface parking lots, many just impermeable surfaces, and it's come up in other small area plan discussions. And then also, when I look at the limited green space that we do have, and I'll limit my comments just to Soldiers Field, looking at the green space available, the majority is the golf course. And I know that many people have very strong feelings about that not being limited in any way. And I will say, as one who has been at the public swimming pool or at the local playgrounds in Soldiers Field, I often see them at or beyond capacity in the summer, and yet look out at vast expanses of the green space of the golf course, which requires a lot of land for play. And I understand that it is difficult to get a tee time, and I can definitely appreciate that. But as looking at how the city is projected to grow and being part of that growth myself, I do wonder which voices are being overrepresented and underrepresented in these discussions so far, and I continue to hear such strong engagement and fervor of avid golfers. But when I look at the city and the people that I've met and the people that have come from a variety of places, I don't see that same representation in the people that I'm meeting in my neighborhood, in downtown, and patients coming to Mayo Clinic. I've just had a discussion today with a couple that was here visiting their son who's in fellowship and pathology, and they were talking about the great city amenities of downtown and how walkable it was. And they weren't walking toward the massive green space that is yet separated by a chain link fence to all uses, all other uses limited to about a third of the park, and golf being fenced off, pay for use, and some of the best shaded, best natural areas in this downtown area. And so I would just commend the city for engaging a variety of processes, and I would look to the statistically significant survey and the other opportunities, because when I look out at the crowd gathered tonight, I just don't see the same demographic representation as I see in statistical projections of the growth. And so I appreciate that everyone has a very passionate idea. I would just ask us to consider other compromises and be okay that change does not mean that we're destroying history. It doesn't mean that we are losing something. Change is hard to accept, but that's one of the beauties of Rochester, is drawing in so many people from so many different areas. It brought us here. We have a variety of perspectives, and when we use our core downtown urban walkable land for a very specific limited use, we cut off equity to other populations that don't have access to that sport or don't have interest in that sport. And especially looking at the Soldiers Field Playground, and I'll just end here. When there's not even the ability to compromise that the pool facility could grow in the next 3 years to incorporate even the tiniest amount of the existing golf space, it makes me feel like we've overrepresented a no compromises, no changes if it affects me negatively. And so I would just encourage people to look beyond into the future of what might be in Rochester, and that doesn't mean that we have to completely destroy what has been, but what can come. Thank you.
After Mike will be Malterschling.
My name is Mark Reeder, and I thank the Park Board for listening to us. I agree with the comments of all the speakers, especially the previous speaker, who was willing to be courageous and talk about the underrepresented portions of our community. I do want to make the point that golf is open to everyone, and that includes underrepresented people. I also agree with Mort. You can't fight City Hall. I grew up in southeast Rochester, Marvale Addition on Marion Road. I watched Eastwood's construction. I saw Ray Keller hit the opening tee shot there at the grand opening. I rode my bike to Eastwood to play when I was a little kid. My mom and dad played at Eastwood. We celebrated as a family their 60th wedding anniversary with a luncheon and a short game contest at Eastwood. My 2 younger brothers worked there. Our kids picked up range balls for Frank Taylor when we lived close to the golf course. My son and his wife recently moved back from the East Coast and bought a couple's pass this year. And our grandson has already hit golf balls at the Eastwood range. So we have 4 generations of municipal golf in Rochester, just with our own family, primarily at Eastwood. Today we live in a townhome, and I play more golf than ever at walkable Soldiers Field as Life Circle begins to close. I worked for 35 years at Mayo Clinic, and I was chair of Mayo's Recreation Committee when the 1978 flood devastated Rochester. I was asked to serve on the city's Focus on 4 task force, and our job was to figure out how to meet the demand for golf when Soldiers Field was going to be closed for flood construction. We used National Golf Foundation data to conclude and recommend that the city build the 4th city golf course. That recommendation was supported by Kirk Taylor's Park and Recreation Department. Plans were drawn up for an 18-hole course at Hadley Creek. The population of Rochester in 1980 was 58,000. Today it's twice that amount at 121,000. So why are we talking about repositioning golf courses? Our city may be changing, but golf is not. Golf is an amazing activity. It improves a person's physical and social health. It even improves our emotional health as we walk through the green grass and the trees that support the carbon footprint. Reducing access to golf to our growing and diverse population simply doesn't make sense to me. Our fine city golf is open to all and can be a differentiating factor when people choose to live here. There are many golfers at this meeting, and if we're honest, those of us who have purchased annual passes know that we've had one of the best deals in the state. Seniors pay $695 a year to play 4 courses, quality courses, when there's enough money in the budget to maintain them. We have underpaid to play golf for years. I don't understand the arithmetic that goes into the graphs that we've seen and how much we need to increase the fees or the park levy or the passes, but I, for one, am willing to pay more. I also think that we taxpayers should be willing to support the lifelong sport of golf, just as we do the other activities in the Park and Rec Department. Golf brings in more revenue than any other Park and Rec activity. Last year, golf actually made money. What is wrong with that? I also agree with Mayor Norton's suggestions that we should try some new things to manage our 4 18-hole courses, and if they don't work, fail fast and try something else. Because if we close any part of them and we put up a parking lot, the failure is immediate and permanent. Thank you.
Frank Silver, you're up next.
Ladies, gentlemen, I've been a resident now for Rochester about 4.5 years.
Can you state your name, too?
Please state your name.
Oh, Mike Tuisha. Tuisha, like falling star. Tuisha upon. There's older people here that understand that. I've been here about 4.5 years. One of the reasons, and I live on Hadley, on the golf course. And I play a lot of golf. And but one of the reasons I moved here, besides family too, but we could have moved and lived in a different suburb area. I like to play golf, or you know, in a different town. But I like to play golf, and when I saw the courses the city had and what you could play for, and have them coming out of the cities, the Twin Cities and that stuff, it just made sense that get close, get on the course. One of the things I enjoy the most on the course is watching families come through. It's only there, I'm on hole 6, and last year I found over 3,500 golf balls. Not in my yard, but I found a lot of golf balls, but I just enjoy going out, giving these kids that are coming through golf balls. And they're with their families. It's one of the few things that you do see that when families play with little kids that can barely drag a golf club across a green, the mom and dad are both there. It's generally just not like one. Swimming pools are great. A lot of times it's just one parent bringing the kids, not both of them. And this kind of brings that binding within the family. And it's just so enjoyable. I enjoy that. And I also enjoy the fact, like with Hadley and that stuff, the ladies golf when they go through. Yeah, I mean, they can scream when they make a putt. It's enjoyable. I enjoy it. I have to go out and give them golf balls once in a while. But yeah, it's just hard to be. I'm not trying to and maybe it was covered, but to close the course down and soldiers and turn it into a recreational, other type of a recreational deal or a park or something, that still takes cost and maintenance. You still have to pay to still cut the grass, go out and maintain all of this, and I haven't seen those numbers. I don't know what those numbers are. Soldiers would be, as I'm wearing a hat, would be a crime. That's not right. That Soldiers Field was set up the way it's set up for golf. That's the other stuff is a privilege that they could go with them. That's my feelings on it. Thank you.
Terry Johnson, for the Avery Meyer. That was Terry Johnson after Frank.
Good evening, my name is Walter Schlenk, and actually I live on Eastwood Golf Course, so much in common. We moved here 25 years ago, and the first thing I did was join the Eastwood Men's Club and bought an annual pass, and have kept that in play for as long as we've been here. I guess I'd like to open by acknowledging the staff at Eastwood, that the quality of the people, both at the pro shop, the superintendent. Kind of a funny story, we hosted the city championship. I saw the superintendent out there, I think at 5 o'clock that morning, and when I went to bed at close to 9, he was out still working on the course, under the lights on his tractor, to make sure he represented that to all the other golfers from all the other courses in the city that come over to play in that tournament. Just shows the kind of commitment and quality staff. I don't know how long that'll last if we don't give them the kind of resources they need, because they are so proud of those facilities. When I got here, I knew nobody 25 years ago. When I went to Eastwood, I was embraced into the Men's Club. 160 men probably there in the club. I made new friends that are still friends 25 years later. I hear my story over and over again. get paired up with somebody, how are you doing, where you work? Oh, I just moved here, I went to work at Mayo, I work at, well, it used to be IBM. Or, yeah, here, there, and everywhere. But it really includes you in the community, includes you in the city, and that's a value I don't know that we can capture with just numbers or dollar signs or those type of things. As far as how do we pay for it, 25 years I've dutifully paid my taxes to the Rochester schools. I've never had a child in the school. I support the aquatic system. I support tennis. I support pickleball. I don't play any of those games. But having those kind of opportunities, that's what makes our community special. That's what makes our community somewhere people want to live. And all those are going to be important as we grow by 40,000 people. One last thing, I'm a retired city employee. I can't afford to join Summerby. I can't afford to join the country club. The people that are out there golfing are guys that was a plumber, a guy that worked for the city, guys that were in admin at Mayo, you know. I've never met Dr. Anybody on Eastwood Golf Course. I've met a ton of guys that came out of IT and you know, working facilities and those type of things. So it's a treasure we've got here with our local courses. We've got wonderful people just working their rears off to present a quality product, and we owe it to them, we owe it to the community to invest appropriately and grow golf and get the kind of conditions here that we can afford. I agree with everybody else's statement. I would gladly pay twice for my annual payouts and still feel like I was getting a
Tom DeBoer and Bob Hudson. No, you're go ahead, Frank.
No, I'm not Tom.
No, they're in the queue. Tom DeBoer and Bob Hudson, can you come up front?
Move me to the park, Tom DeBoer, move me to the park master plan,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Trying
So Bob Hobson and Gary Schuneman.
Ready?
Yeah, whenever you're go.
Right. You didn't start that early, did you? Hi, everybody. My name is Frank Silker. I've been in Rochester, Minnesota since 74 years. And
You're not that old.
all the way through high school and everything. Now, I didn't play golf or anything in high school. It just there was too much else to do. And as I got older, and this was in 1970, and that's when I started golf, and it all came just because a couple friends of mine wanted me to go along with them and play golf. One guy borrowed his sister's clubs, which were right-handed, and I used those. I lost every ball that she had in that bag. That was in the first 9 holes. Now I went in, we were down at Soldiers, and then we went in, and Ray was there, and Bumper, both. And Ray knew that I batted both left and right. He had seen me play ball. And he says, how'd it go? And I said, terrible. I said, I can't get it anywhere. Well, he says, I got some power belts in the back. They're left-handed. Why don't you swing left-handed? I went out with that on that second 9, then I could hit it just as far as the rest of them. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I could hit it just as far. That was okay with me. I fell in love with the game. Today, I still love the game. I'm a very avid golfer. Soldiers is important to me in a way. I'm a member of Eastwood now, men's club, but Soldiers is so important to me because I go down there and I play during the week with some other friends of mine and stuff. We wind up, this ought to be good for you guys to remember, we wind up with a lot of people that come here from the Mayo Clinic, to the Mayo Clinic, and come down there and play golf. And for other things in this town, I wind up with a lot of the new people. They shove them off on us. You know, what we always were just like ambassadors with golf that way. But I've met a guy from Australia that comes up every year, and he plays here every year. He has his clubs shipped ahead of him, so he made sure they got here in time. You know, and and then another couple that come from New York every year, because he has to come in and has his heart checked, but they come out and play golf. And I always get a bucks from them. I go back down there and play with them. You know, tourism
I guess. Keep that in mind. There is a lot of people that come to this town for a lot of things, and when they see that golf course sitting right downtown, not too far from their hotel, they know they can go down there and rent clubs, play around the golf. That makes a big difference. It's, you know, we have, at Eastwood, we have a men's club, and we do a work day. Now, we do a lot of things around the course with that work day. Guys volunteer their time, come in on Saturday mornings and go out and do stuff. You know, and our greenskeeper is there, and he tells us exactly what to do. You know, when we get out and get things done. When they had the ash borer incident with all that, losing a lot of trees, you know, a couple other guys got going, got it started. We started taking up a collection. You guys said, okay, fine, whatever you make, we'll match. We raised $10,000 for trees out there, just out of the pockets of guys. You know, and it's everybody tries to keep the courses good. You know, it's not that they raise that price. That price is fine, but don't. Yeah, it is. It's. I mean, I've been to Lincoln, Nebraska. We stopped, played there. They have like 10 or 12 courses there. You can play every one of those 10 or 12 courses, but you're going to pay about $2,500 a year. That's still one of the best deals I've heard of. You know.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Get started.
I didn't see Bob Hobson and Gary come up, but then next is Kevin Berg, and then Bill Horlitz, and then Logene Borland. I do want to, we are at 7:30, so this was our time that we were supposed to be done. So as we go forward, we said we would keep going. A reminder to add to the conversation things that we haven't heard yet. And also, don't feel obligated to speak for 4 minutes. You have 4 minutes, but if you can wind it up or be concise, that would be really helpful. We have possibly another 40 minutes of this. So we want to hear from everybody. So take your 4 minutes if you need it, but also if you can be concise, we also love that too. So Kevin, okay. And then after Kevin will be Bill, and then Logene, unless they're Soldier Field. Okay, thank you. So after this will be Sharon Earl.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Finally got it right. My name is Kevin Berg, and I am the president of the Men's League at Eastwood Golf Course. I am in my second year of a one-year term, so obviously I don't count very well, and I don't know what time of day it is. I would like a few things I'd like to say, observations that I've seen. I've been in the golf community for quite a while in Rochester. When I first moved to Rochester in the early 80s, I lived out by Eastwood Golf Course. Then I lived out by Northern Hills Golf Course. So I've been around to all the different golf courses. I've also lived away from Rochester and played a lot of other courses around the state and around the country. We have the opportunity here to play golf at a very reasonable price. I agree with everything Larry and his group said. I think Larry did a wonderful job. It was a great presentation. And I like to see that there are some other options that we have had as far as maybe being able to pay for golf. We've taken advantage of it for many years, being able to not pay for the amount of upkeep and stuff that we had through our fees that we raised with golf. And I think it's time that kind of changes, and it's good that you guys are looking at different budgetary things to do. I took a quick calculation on the increases that Larry suggested at 12, 10, 8, and whatever else. It's almost 5 years till we're over $1,000 a year, and that was starting at about $700 a year. So there's plenty of opportunity for growth in our annual fees. Now, speaking to the comments about the green space, you make wonderful comments. You obviously have children. My girls were swimmers. I understand the need for some better swimming opportunities in Rochester, but summer swimming in Rochester is 10 weeks long, max. You know, that golf in Rochester is 6 months, and sometimes 7, sometimes 8. I have golfed in every month of the year in Minnesota. I had to leave work one day in February to get in a round of golf so I could get that. So, some of the negative things that have happened over the time as we've been less able to support our golf is we've had a decrease in the number of professionals that we've had. So consequently, our golf intelligence in the community has dropped significantly. You go out now and you see people doing things, stupid things on the golf course that would never be allowed in other areas because the golf intelligence has been so low, has become so low. Kids that would have learned 10 years ago what proper etiquette in on the golf courses didn't get the opportunity to go to some of those junior programs because of cuts. I know that now it's going to be very hard to train those people, teach those people better golf habits and increase their golf intelligence. We get better equipment so the grounds crews are able to do a better job with less people. But the guys at Eastwood, the guys all over are working their butts off every day. And I think they deserve recognition. You've given them pay increases, but that just decreases the number of people that they can have. My suggestion is look at your volunteer program. We talked about volunteers for food. Look at your volunteer program. Change your policy so some of our aging people can come and volunteer. Set up a training program and let them come out and help keep the courses up. They more than want to do that. Thank you.
I didn't see Sharon come up, so after that is, I didn't see Sharon come up, so after that is Randy Burton and then Jean, Marconal.
My name is Sharon Earl. I actually grew up in Rochester. My dad played at Soldiers Field back in the 50s, 60s. I did play a lot of softball. Left the state, came back in 1977, and I've played golf ever since. Soldiers Field is one of my favorite golf courses because I can walk it. I think in the winter, I cross-country ski down there. And Eastwood is another one of my favorite courses, which I belong to league up there. And I do know that with the high schools playing their golf at 3 courses or 4, well 3 because they don't have it, they practice. I do know too there's a lot of tournaments going on and a lot of charitable tournaments. And there's been times when all the tee times are taken, you can't even get out there to golf. Therefore, if you get rid of Soldiers Field or decrease it to 9 holes, you're not going to have the people, able to play the 18 holes, and there's just going to be no tee times for the rest. I also agree that we are paying very little for season passes, and I think that could increase to help with this. And I was astonished to see how little tax money is going into the golf courses. That's all I can say.
Thank you. I didn't see Randy Burton jump up or Jean Markinet. So that is then, it looks like, Paula Mirth or Paula Winter could go either way. No, okay. And then Tim Lund. That is the end of our open comment period then. Thank you, those of you who signed up. I appreciate that today. Just a second.
Number 4 to sign up. Greg Martin.
You signed up on the Soldiers Field Master Plan.
That was where they told me to sign up.
So, let me just see who else may have signed up on the wrong sheet. So we have a Deb Gary.
That's me.
Okay. David Richardson. And was that for golf? So, yeah. Oh, for the master plan. Okay, not golf. Roy Sutherland for golf or master plan?
Master plan.
Okay. Craig Martins for golf?
For right now, yes.
Okay.
Whatever it is.
And then, well, we have the master plan public hearing later as well. Looks like a Greg Veneer. Eric Noonan.
For the master plan.
Thank you. Bob Lyons. Bill Shaughnessy is for master plan, I think. And then Martha Vojtovich.
Master plan.
Thank you. Okay, so it'll be Deb and then Craig, right? For golf?
Yes.
Okay.
It's golf, but I might actually just bridge it right into the other. First of all, thank you for the opportunity for the golf community to respond to recent requests from all of us. My name is Deb Gary. I'm an avid golfer in Rochester. This is a similar letter to the one I sent yesterday to the City Council, the Mayor, and the Park Board. I would like to read it tonight so that others can hear it. Once again, the golfing community finds itself in the position of justifying the existence of our historical golf course, Soldiers Memorial Field Golf Course in the city of Rochester. It should instead be admired, preserved, and maintained as a city of Rochester treasure. The Theodore Worth Golf Course in Minneapolis should be compared to Soldiers Field. They write on their website, Worth Golf Course is one of the oldest public golf courses in the state of Minnesota, rich in tradition. It's refreshing to see the support of the Minneapolis City and their Park and Recreation Department. It too is on prime land that could be used for other purposes. However, they choose to maintain and preserve it for the rich history it provides. Worth Golf Course was founded in 1916. Soldiers Field was founded in 1927 and was the first outstate course. It's safe to say Soldiers Field is one of the oldest in the state and rich in tradition also. Soldiers Golf Course has a unique offering that fits the needs of Rochester, our visitors, as many have said, our youth, and our senior community. And yet, it's a very competitive course with its current 18-hole layup. Try getting over a river 4 times. Soldiers Golf Course has the most rounds played of all the city courses, 5 years data and counting. The NGF study, as was pointed out, did not recommend changing or eliminating Soldiers Field Golf Course. It appears the Park and Rec Department has spent most of their efforts on doing just that through the second option of replacing or repositioning. None of the concepts presented to the public included an option to keep Soldiers Field Golf Course as it is. We should recognize who the face of golf is today. Sales of season passes 2021 compared back to 2017 were up 40% in the categories of young adult and young adult couples. These are young ages, the futures, 19 to 25, juniors up to 18, 40% growth in those age groups. According to the NGF, we are also on the cusp of a significant retiree boom. Golf isn't dying, it's going to grow. We can build, here's where the master plan comes in. We can build an arboretum elsewhere. We can build pickleball courts elsewhere. We already have an abundance of walking and biking trails in Rochester. We also have acres and acres of parkland. We can build a super aquatic center off to the west and leave the 18-hole golf course intact. We can never, ever get back what is being considered to be taken away. As golf continues to grow, we'll need all of our current golf courses to support that growth. Why are we being so short-sighted in eliminating a historic landmark? In summary, and based on the golf response you've seen tonight, I'd really like to recommend that that aquatic center be expanded off to the west and leave the 18-hole golf course intact. I think facts have shown we can support it financially. I think facts show that we're growing. So that would be my recommendation to the park board. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Craig Martins. Some of you may have read my letters to the editor to the Post Bulletin. They printed one twice, so you should have read it. Anyway, I was hired by IBM in 1968, and I'm a city taxpayer. I played golf at the city courses for 54 years. I appreciate that. Thank you very much to the park board. It's been a wonderful experience. Now, I've had 5 holes in one. You should always start out with something that people don't know about you, but don't tell the individuals that I play golf with, because they'd ask me to reduce my handicap soon. I'm a great grandpa, and I'm a husband. Now, those are actually the most important things. I want to thank Chad Raymaker for scheduling this meeting. I talked to Chad after the August 9th Park Board meeting and recommended that we have this type of meeting. Thank you very much, Chad. And also I sent an email to Kim Norton, and she said she was going to attend tonight, and I think Kelly Kirkpatrick, maybe they're here, don't know, but anyway, thank you. And I also want to thank the Park Board, the members of Park and Rec, for all your services. Thank you very much. We talked a little bit about tax levy tonight, property tax dollars. All of us pay property tax dollars. Our Park and Rec Board distributes those property tax dollars to all the various venues that it has to support. I only have figures for 2021. Anyway, the capital budget in 2021 was $4.9 million. In 2021, golf received $55,000. If you divide 55,000 by 4.9 million, you get 1%. So 1% of your tax dollars are going toward golf. The rest of it is self-sustaining. And that's very important. Homestead County, I wrote a letter to Kim Norton and the City Council. It started out, Homestead County and Rochester have had medium and high COVID transmission rates consistently. For Med City, there's a large number of arriving male guests, shopper guests, large number of arriving workers, totaling into thousands each day. A healthier COVID climate would be a plus. Park and Rec contributes substantially to keeping our younger, middle-aged, and older residents in the less COVID transmissible out of doors. Thank you. However, when volunteers who teach our kids to golf and swim in the land of 10,000 lakes ask for just a little bit of money out of Park and Rec's $4.9 million capital budget for a little more golf and swimming capital, as I said, golf got $55,000 in 2021. Swimming barely had enough to open the Silver Lake pool. Park and Rec says, quote, "We wish we had more property tax funds available." Flash, Answer Man, bulldozer at Cascade Park, obviously a surprise to the city residents. City, new $4.2 million amphitheater coming that has the support of local performing arts groups. No referendum done or meetings held concerning the $4.2 million. Park and Rec maintenance costs will occur in perpetuity. Property tax funds now seem to be available for the arts. So Park and Rec distributes these. In the past, we had a great civic theater. The city said, repurpose city volunteer actors and support organization to more professional actors from outside the Rochester area, with the result that repurposed theater volunteers are gone forever. Costs are now a problem. Lesson, let's not lose our volunteers. Okay, another way to survey community needs is to see who is volunteering in the Park and Rec venues to meet community needs. then commissioners will understand the golf and swim volunteers that repeatedly come to Park and Rec meetings asking to speak and receive 5 minutes of Park and Rec time. These are volunteers for a community need, and their repeated volunteer requests are in and of itself a survey on the needs of the community.
Craig, can you wrap up, Joe?
Okay, it's time to think outside the box. How do we do this? The capital, to do this, Park and Rec has $4.9 million annual capital available from city, state, national sources, which the Park and Rec commissioners feel they should use each year to add miles of expensive bike trails. Rochester now has 85 miles of paved interconnecting walking and biking trails, which may or may not be intensively used. That capital also goes to the 35 acres of new parkland that's automatically generated by new subdivisions, and these acres are added to the nearly 3,000 parkland acres that already exist. Now Mankato has 900 acres of parkland, and they have a 15,000 student Mankato State University. Solution: repurpose the annual additional 35 acres of parkland to prairie to help bees and monarchs temporarily, saving parkland capital equipment cost, and to help assuage the massive $6 million annual parkland maintenance bill. And also place a moratorium on new construction of expensive bike trails until money is available. With these savings, the park board could use just a small portion of their $4.9 million capital and $6 million maintenance budget for swim pools and golf.
Mr.
Thank you very
please
much.
wrap up.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you. That concludes our public hearing for golf. We do appreciate everybody that spoke tonight, and as well as those who are just here in support. We, as a park board, are listening to you as a whole and as a community. So we thank you. We are going to take a short recess, and then in about 10 minutes start with the Soldiers Field Memorial Park Master Plan. We are going to go ahead and get started on our Soldiers Field Memorial Park Master Plan update, and that will be given by staff. Soon after that, we will also have public comment for those of you who wish to speak about the Soldiers Field Memorial Park Master Plan. But first, Mr. Nigberg.
Thank you. My name is Mike Nigber, City of Rochester Park and Recreation Department. As Council President talked about, Park Board President talked about, this is a master plan update. We had a master plan that was developed in 2014. That was the first master plan that was done since the park was really done in the 1930s. So again, a long history of the park itself, long duration of the park not really having any planning done overall. And now we've had 2 plans now within an 8-year time frame. That's also not a very fast time frame, by the way. So again, this is really a opportunity here to have the community input, provide their say in what's going to happen at the park for the long-term vision of that area. So again, just talked about what we did in 2014. Back in that point in time was to confirm a long-range vision of the park itself, and again, prioritize different improvements that we had planned for, and looking at that strategies for achieving that vision in that long-term period. And again, we're looking at 20 to 30-year time frame. We say 10 to 15 here, but really it's a short-term vision as well as a long-term vision. I won't delve too far into what the park sizes are. You guys are very familiar with that based on golfing and based on recreation, but it's a very large park in our community. It's not a regional park. It's a different designation we have, but it's a big community park that we do have here in town. A lot of different amenities that are currently at the park. It serves a local neighborhood need as well as a community-wide benefit for the entire city. It's been that way from the very inception. In fact, back when it was developed, again, the golf course was there, but it was also developed as a recreational hub for our community. Now we have grown to a point where recreational activities take place across the entire city. Complexes at sports complexes like soccer, baseball, hockey, etc. are all across the entire city, not just at one spot like it used to be. In 2014, the highlights of that plan were looking at the reduction of the golf down to 9 holes, retention of the memorial area, that was pretty important back then, enhancing the aquatics, improving the running track and winter skating areas, adding some new trails, modifying courts, and creating more flexible space. Again, that was a reflection of the community input we received back then. Again, as part of this current update master plan, we're currently going through the same process for engagement. After that master plan was first adopted, we went through a 5-year planning cycle and an implementation. We had no real money applied for the improvements, so again, we looked at what we could do very low cost and very low effort. Soldiers Field was moved to the home for Rochester Fest. The council did allocate some funding for electrical improvements and some water improvements at that point in time. We looked at adding some new track area, access to the track area itself in 2017. Tennis court maintenance, a common thing we want to do is asset preservation. You guys talk about for golf for asset preservation, tennis and recreation centers and baseball fields, they all need preservation. So again, investing that money ongoing. Lighting modifications, and then took out part of the baseball field on the west side. We retained the east side, so we took out the east side. But we retained the east side baseball field at this point in time, still utilized by the community. In 2020, we actually modified the track area itself to support more event activities and redid the parking lot. That came through additional dollars programmed by the city council through contingency dollars, actually. It was not planned for. There's some excess dollars they applied to the park, which was great. From a historical context, you know, the park itself was developed in concert with the Legion. And again, how they laid that area out, they were drivers in the aquatic side of things, drivers in the golf side of things. They created a very historical looking park with the symmetry of the park itself. We had great old buildings back in the day. Those buildings are no longer there, frankly. So the history that we have for the park right now is that really the design area of that roadway configuration, the very linear nature of the park itself. Other plans that are affected in this area, again, you've got on the very left-hand side of that map over there is the downtown waterfront southeast district. That's a newer area where Ampey and Kmart is. Again, a large development area that will be creating a lot of housing as well as retail, etc. We've got the 6th Street Bridge, which is now in for some funding for federal funding on that side of things, so a great connection to serve that area. We had the downtown DMC walk area and downtown master plan has been going on, which you've all heard about. And then just more recently, the golf evaluation report. These all play a factor in how we look at what's going to happen in and around the park. In 2014, we had some guiding principles that we looked at for the master planning effort. And again, we reviewed those again this time around to verify whether they're still valid, whether they're still accurate for what the community really wanted to see. And in that process, you can read those on the screen. We looked at these different principles and found that they were still very valid. You know, making the park welcoming. We want the park to be welcoming. Preserving the intent of the memorials. That was a standard from 2014. It still retains that same characteristic now today. I had a call just last week on this saying, don't touch the memorials. We weren't planning at it, but again, thanks for the comments. Strengthening the park, access to the neighborhoods. It's really important from the neighborhood connectivity standpoint. I know we talked about trails earlier on, but having that connection points, how people can get into the park is really, really important. Enhancing signage and wayfinding. How can people get there? Where do they go once they're there? What amenities do we have? Signage is an important factor. We don't have to over-signage things, but we'd like to have provided the wayfinding to get people in and around the park. One thing we kept hearing over and over again, both in several master planning efforts as well as in DMC conversations, is once you're at a park, we don't want to get up and leave to go someplace else. We want the variation of amenities. So looking at those different amenities you may have, looking at the life cycle costs that go along with that. As part of this current master plan update, then, we had several engagement processes. The first engagement process was basically a survey that was done, online mapping tool, as well as stakeholder meetings. And again, these are different touch points to gain kind of what we did back in 2014, review that information, share some ideas that are out there. That will help engage us or develop the next set of plans. So the next phase 1 plan for engagement here, the first part here, talked about what people wanted to see. Pickleball was a very, very highly rated activity. The Arboretum was a very highly rated activity. That was the same concept that we had back in 2014 as well, very highly regarded. Getting more interactive with the river, the water aquatics area. People, we've heard that over and over in the various master plans, whether it's Southeast Waterfront or whether it's the Silver Lake Master Plan or whether it is basically any planning activity, we see people asking for connections to the water, the river areas. Looking at expanded aquatics, obviously was a big factor back in 2014. It retained that same characteristics here today as well. Looking at things to be more sustainable, pollinator-friendly gardening, landscaping, things like that. And again, more expansive networks of trails. Again, it's a very common theme we hear through every planning activity. Phase 2 of the engagement really reached out further into our community. Pop-up events, another online survey, really delving down into community stakeholders as well. And again, getting that feature, those inputs back to the youth members of the community and help developing that final plan, or I guess the revised plan here. So we shared this concept plans here. We had 3 options. One showed no changes in golf or retaining 18 holes. The second plan showed a reduction down to 9 holes. And the third plan showed no golf. And again, we wanted to gauge the community input based on those comments, those concepts. Received lots of comments, good and bad. I sat at downtown, this was our first one day, and about half my board says keep golf, the other half the board says get rid of golf. So again, there's a division in the community saying, how do we want to manage this property? And again, it was talked about earlier on how about the community is changing. Members want different things throughout the entire community. How do we use this property overall? That's part of the conversation we had back in 2014. It was reiterated again this time around as well. So as part of that master planning process, we go from those 3 concepts that were on the board earlier to a preferred plan. The preferred plan had involvement from the 2014 master plan, all that engagement that came into that function. We had the 2 phases of community engagement, the arboretum, the aquatics, the flexible lawn spaces. We thought about those things. We thought about our guiding principles that we laid out earlier on, both in 2014, reviewed those again here today. We thought about equity. Who's not participating in our survey information? Who's not participating in our community engagement? What's necessary to serve those members of our community as well? What are we missing in this park? So things like basketball we heard very little about in our engagement, but it's something that we believe from a professional standpoint we should have in that park. It serves the neighborhood as well as the rest of the community. Retention of the historic layout of the park, that geographic layout of the symmetry of the roadways and the linear nature of where the elements sit. That was important from what we heard both from our staff, from the history folks that really like history, as well as in our consultant. We looked at the park system plan. The park system plan provides an overall guide of where things should be at in our community. It's not going to say that every park will provide every asset for everybody. It's a mix of things, so we aren't duplicating efforts, so we're not overlapping on too many playgrounds in one area, too many aquatics, or too many trails, or too many pickleball courts. We look at the overall system as a guiding document and where things play out. So again, we may see things here that may evolve over time, that we're showing pickleball in one phase here, maybe because things got developed 3 years from now or 5 years from now, it may no longer be needed here. So we'll look at that again as time evolves, how these master plans keep going forward. So for the master plan we're proposing forward here right now, we've got a short-term plan, which is really the next 3 years of funding, 3 to 4 to 5 years basically. Part of that's developed on funding available right now through referendum, through grant funding, through other grants that we are seeking. But it includes retaining 18 holes of golf, which is what the city council they did share last night with us, very good comments about that. It does take some modification to those holes to reflect an expansion of the aquatics area predominantly. Connecting a river trail corridor on the very southwest side of the park. And that has been an asked for amenity for the last 20 years. In fact, I think it was 1985, I believe, there's a book written about that included this southwest trail in there. So again, it's been a long time desire by the community members about having connections to that southwest part of town. And then also providing some access paths for the event activities happening down at Soldiers Field in the track area. So again, back a house during events where you can service those food trucks or whatever else. It also provides some staging area for food trucks to remain during the week as well, if that was the case. The master plan also expands aquatics. And again, we're looking at adding things that we don't have here in Rochester right now. The last series of 8 years with the park master plan in 2014, we heard aquatics was a big expansion desire. We've heard that almost nonstop every year about making improvements, how poor our pools are. We're going to Stewartville and to Byron and to other places because our aquatics is not adequate. We know that. We need to invest in our aquatics to make that happen. Now, how far do you go? Do you go to a full water park? That's not a sustainable model in my opinion. So we're trying to find a happy ground here where we're providing some great amenities for our community to utilize, without having to drive across town or across the county to go use the same amenities. So we're adding a lazy river is what we're looking at here, a shallow play area with some slides. We're still providing currently with a larger pool area. We say it's a 50-meter pool. We'll have more discussions on that with the aquatics group when we start coming forward for design. Modifying the splash pad area, the spray pad area, looking at how we can make that more a longer duration. I heard somebody make a statement saying we've got an 8-week or 12-week time frame for swimming. Yeah, part of that's true. Some shoulder seasons here in the fall and the early spring, we could open that spray area up and have that available to the community starting earlier and later in the seasons. So that's a possibility we're looking at as well. Adding some amenities like lounge chairs, some shade seating, some landscaping, things that hard concrete gets really hot at. So again, it's things that people are asking for. This will all be modified and reviewed with the group that we're providing for stakeholders engagement here starting shortly, provided the park board approves the plan and moves forward with the aquatics. Some sample images for you to think about. Again, the 50-meter pool that's currently out there, modifying that slightly, looking at like a climbing wall, looking at some paddle walkers in the very lower left-hand corner down here, the lazy river as well, the shade seating, things like that. Additional changes we're looking at is an inclusive playground or more expansion of the playground here in the very easterly side. Again, that playground really is not very accessible from a adaptive perspective. It's not very accessible from a sensory perspective, so expanding that playground to meet more of those needs. On the west side, we're looking at adding some parking where the playground is there currently. Again, a high demand area from the neighborhood standpoint, from a community standpoint. People are parking along the roadways, walking quite a distance. The common complaint we hear about that is, where can I park? I can't go and get out in the middle of the street and bring my kids in the streets. It's not very convenient. So I think good parking spaces for those users out there is a big high demand location. Then some renovations of some picnic shelters on the east side and a new picnic shelter on the very westerly area. Looking at 2 new basketball courts like we talked about earlier on, and with the law enforcement memorial, we're adding 1 fitness station. That'll be the start of a bigger circuit that may be developed over time. But that's really the basic long or short-term plan that we're talking about here today. Long-term plan, we're looking at something that's going to happen, again, 10 plus years from now. We don't know the exact time frame. We don't know what may happen in this interim time frame between now and then. My speculation, we'll go through another master planning review process. We'll get more community engagement about that. Golfer may remain at that point in time. There may be an old change in the community that says we want something different. The images we have shown out here, they may change as well. That's the reason for community engagement, to get the vision of what that community may entail. Currently, the long-term plan, based on what we heard from the community, is to reduce that down to 9 holes, create the arboretum, add a hammock grove, and retain the historic drives on the western side. Right now is a Y area on the roadways where the current parking lots are. Modify that roadway to reflect back the current historic nature of that area. Long-term plans also include pickleball courts. This is one area that we look at maybe changing long-term. Reason being is there's other ideas where pickleball may end up at a bigger community recreational facility, possible, or they're also looking at other opportunities they have themselves with some businesses to develop that. Looking at expanding some parking lot areas both in the east and west sides based on additional amenities. Curling, for example, was one location we want to see expand winter activities. This is a very fitting location for that. Is it the end result? It may not be. That's a privately funded partnership that we'd see, like we do elsewhere around our community, where they'd raise funds to develop that aspect. Will they have the funds to do so? They talk about that, but will we see that long term? We don't know that answer. Then again, further expansion of the sensory garden, more by the nature play where the new West Shelter will end up being. Modifying the park itself to include some paved areas for food trucks. And again, food trucks we keep hearing about in almost every project we look at for master planning. Whether it's the DMC master planning, Southeast Waterfront master planning, our 2 park plans we got going on right now. Food trucks are a highly desired activity in our parks. Now, we offer them right now. They're available in our parks. They don't come right now because the mass of people aren't there to congregate. They want that mass of people to take advantage of. Having a park, a food truck promenade, may help create that activity. Looking at providing some warming shelters for the ice rinks that are out there. Looking at a new trailhead connection on the very east side by 9th Street there. And again, making that a better welcoming connection with plans for that new development further to the east. Again, a new riverfront plaza midpoint in that park itself. Again, that connection to the water. Cost-wise, we're looking at this is kind of phase 1 improvements here is about $18.5 million. The vast majority of that money going towards aquatics. This is funded predominantly by grant dollars we currently have and DMC dollars we currently have, as well as referendum dollars. So planned funding we currently have going on forward. This includes these are our estimates right now. We'll get further refinement on that based on the construction plans that may be developed once the plan is approved. Long-term costs that we're looking at is another $15.9 million. And again, this is 10 plus years from now. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that, to be honest with you, because again, costs are going to change quite dramatically. They're changing quite dramatically every year anyways. So again, projecting out 10 years is almost an exercise in just guessing. But it gives you a framework of that. Again, I just talked about the funding sources right now. We've got a federal grant that is $5 million. We've got state grant dollars going towards playground activities and a trail. Park dedication funds, we're using some of that park dedication money to make some neighborhood improvements, park referendum, and DMC dollars. That is the predominant location where the funds are coming from. And with that, then, that's all I have for a presentation.
Thank you. So we will open public comment in just a moment. I will go kind of back over quickly our format for that. We have about 45 minutes dedicated to public comment. And we will ask that when you are called up, you state your name. You have 4 minutes. And then we ask you to wrap up at that time. Reminder that we want to hear from everybody, but if somebody's already stated something that you were thinking, maybe agree with them or agree with that point and then add additional information. But again, we want to hear from everybody. I will be going through the list of people that have signed up to talk about Soldiers Field Memorial Park Master Plan, and I will be calling up a queue as well. So I do have Deb Gary listed at this, and I didn't know if you wanted to speak. No, okay. I know that you already did, but you were on here, so. So the first would be David Richardson, and then I'll have Roy Sutherland and Craig, if you're speaking about this as well. Okay. Come up and sit in the queue so that we can keep going. So thank you very much. Please state your name.
Hello, my name is David Richardson. I was a golf professional at Soldiersville Golf Course from 2003 to 2021. As many of you know, until this year I also assisted Paul Woodman in golf administration. I always respected Paul, and still do, and appreciated his support for Rochester City Golf over those years. I also respect those of you serving as park board members. I know it's often a thankless job, very time consuming at times, but I've seen for myself it's an important job. Thank you for taking your time to listen to golfers this evening. I'm here to ask that the proposed changes to the front 9 of the golf course not be made. If the holes are shortened as proposed, they negatively affect the playability of every single one of them. None of them would be better because of the change. I stated last night to a KTTC reporter that alterations would create several additional par 3s. That might not be accurate, but what would be created would be either extremely long par 3s or very short par 4s, along with a very short par 5 9th hole. Shortening the holes as proposed, and while the master plan that you saw doesn't make mention of it, based on the drawings, the second hole of the golf course would also be shortened, be a considerable downgrade to the quality of the front 9. The golf holes would be too short to provide much of a challenge to many, but certainly not all, of the golfers playing golf at Soldiers Field Golf Course. Here's a few things that would likely happen as a result of shortening 5 or 6 of the front 9 holes. Fewer rounds of golf would be played. How many rounds fewer is hard to estimate, but it's easy to predict that such changes wouldn't increase golf rounds or improve people's perception of the golf course. It would only diminish them. The chances to host outside golf tournaments would be severely reduced. It's unlikely that charity tournaments, the Rochester All-City Golf Championship, or many high school tournaments would be played there. The course would just be too short to be a challenge to them. During my time at Soldiers Field, we had numerous statewide qualifying tournaments and junior state tournaments. Those would also likely be permanently eliminated. The golf course would lose considerable prestige in the Minnesota golf community. As Bill Horlitz, who's here today to speak, noted so well in his recent Post-Bulletin op-ed, the architectural integrity of the golf course, its history, and many other factors makes it special among Minnesota golfers. Does this translate into revenue? I think it does. The golf course wouldn't have the draw it now has for people visiting Rochester. Most golfers derive pleasure in the challenges that golf provides. Too much challenge can take the fun out of the game, and too little can also make it not interesting to play. Golfers that find a golf course with holes that are too short to be challenging tend not to play there very often. Please don't let that happen at Soldiersville Golf Course. Thank you.
Mr. Sutherland?
Yes.
Okay. And then Nick Miller will be next to queue up, and then it looks like Greg Miller.
Comments on mine in interest of time.
Okay, thank you.
I obviously shouldn't have wore this t-shirt tonight. After what happened last night, I probably should have burned it. You know, I've been gone a long time. I couldn't find 101 in the Mill Civic Center. I managed it for 10 years. I couldn't find 101. So. Roy Sutherland. And thank you for the opportunity tonight. I'm amazed at the turnout and the fact that you all hung in here. I applaud you for that. One of my big concerns as I saw the master plan was the three options. Where the hell is the fourth option that shows Soldiers Field maintaining as a golf course? For 8 years, we've heard a lot of discussion about the importance of Soldiers Field staying as it is today. And yet that was completely ignored. I don't know how that happened in a master planning situation. Decisions were made, and I don't think the public was involved in a 3-option versus a 4-option. So I guess that was one of my big concerns. Another concern as I looked at the master plan is who gave away all the land behind the YMCA? I don't see it in the master plan. I don't know what's going to happen over there. There was an extensive amount of Soldiers Field parkland that was originally a gift that is no longer shows up on the master plan. I guess I'm wondering about that. For a long, long time, we talked about pools and money and maintaining. I tried to close Silver Lake Pool, 25 years ago because it was a mess and it wasn't being used and all of this. I don't understand if we have 2 pools, one is in much better shape than the other, so we're going to fix up the one that's in much better shape. If the city has made the decision to close one of the pools, maybe that makes sense. But my sense is that decision has not been made. In closing, and I promise to keep it short, but how the hell can you guys drive into Eastwood or Northern Hills and say those park drives and those parking lots are adequate? You gotta find the money to fix the damn things. They're a disgrace. Somebody's gonna get hurt, killed. It reminds me of when Northern Hills, to get there, you had to go on a gravel road. We're in the same position again, except now you get to the golf course and your car's, suspension systems saying, please don't go up that road. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Is there a Gary? It looks like Gary Never or
Gary Newman.
Gary Newman.
Oh, no.
Oh, it's in cursive, and looks like a doctor's writing, maybe. Okay, thank you. And then Eric Noonan, if you're here, and can you come up front so you're ready to go when it's your turn, and also Bob Lyons.
Hi, I'm Gary Newman. I want to thank the park board and the park staff for these opportunities to talk about the golf program. That's the first thing. The Deputy City Administrator in Parish summarized yesterday's discussion. This is mostly what that's about, really excellently yesterday. His final comment was, quote, There's a strong consensus of the mayor and council for maintaining 18 holes of golf at Soldiers Field. And I want to make sure the park board understands that strongly. Just watch the video, it's a good example of that. There's one thing that kind of was left up in the air in my opinion, so I'm going to bring that up. Council discussion included comments from many members of the elected body that options should be investigated to retain the 18 holes of Soldiers Field as is by investigating other ways to reduce the footprint of the aquatics facility, or to consider other sites such as the land by the YMCA, Silver Lake, the ball field, or other design measures to connect the aquatics to the current bathhouse, if that is the plan, such that no holes would have to be redesigned, which would make Soldiers Field course less playable. And that was stated by quite a few members of the city council and the mayor, and I wanted to make sure the park board understood that. So that being said, I would ask if you would consider, probably not tonight, but at your next meeting, directing the staff and the consultants to provide other designs or locations to eliminate the redesign of 5 holes at Soldiers Field and leave it as is. I'm going to say another thing that I'm done, except for I've seen the presentations on engagement and the plan several times now, and I've had a nagging thought, and I'm going to say it and I'll probably regret it. Both former government official for the city, as some of these people know. Master planning works well when you're using it on vacant or changing sites. The small area plans that the city has done are excellent examples of that. But it seems to me, and I'm not an expert on this, but when you start including well-used land uses that are loved and are actively used, basically by including them in that process, you're saying you really don't value it very highly. And I think that is part of the issue here, because then what happens is, then you end up with a very divisive process where one group has to defend their use of a property that's gone on for 90 years, and other groups are saying, hey, we want an opportunity to use that. I really think you should consider, if you're going to do engagement, you should do it on think about restricting it to vacant areas or areas that are changing. And the other uses that it's been done in the city have worked very well. In this case, I really think it's saying to the golf community, same thing with changing the design of 5 holes. We really don't value this as highly as we used to. And those things change, but once you change a golf course, you can't change it back. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Evening all. My name is Eric Minden. We've heard from a lot of golf supporters tonight. We've heard stories, personal stories, we've heard patient stories that you've interacted with. What I'd like you to do is set aside the relationship that you have with golf. Many of you clearly love it. Maybe some of you find it boring. Set that aside. The decision should not hinge on that relationship. This is about how we best utilize a downtown recreational space for the most people as we look forward. The most common statements I've heard put out by proponents of retaining 18 holes at Soldiers Field are as follows. It's a recreational activity uniquely accessible to the elderly. It's history of it being the use case in that space. The environmental benefits of retaining it as green space, and that it's a tourist draw. Well, here are some facts about golf that we haven't heard tonight. Less than 8% of the country plays golf, at least in the traditional format. It has the least efficient land-to-player ratio of any popular sport. If basketball were scaled up to a similar land ratio, the court would be over 30 acres. It's declining in popularity if you look past the past 3 years.
Please, it's his turn.
And has been for over a decade. Younger generations see it as a detriment to a city's appeal, not an asset. It uses 6 to 8 times the pesticide and fertilizer of a traditional lawn. It's a space that is, for all intents and purposes, ecologically sterile. And the only environmental benefits being that plant coverage makes for a cooler surface when compared to asphalt or concrete. Grass sequesters carbon in its root structure. Turf grass has almost no root structure. Golf does not lend itself to tree coverage or native plant diversity. Even when placed directly on transit lines, it remains a car-oriented activity. It provides next to no economic benefit to the surrounding businesses unless those businesses are located directly connected to the course. And the health benefits of the sport are that it involves walking, which is not a unique benefit. Soldiers Field Golf Course in its current configuration limits non-automobile access to downtown from the south and southeast, and Broadway commercial spaces from Pill Hill in the historic southwest. It plays a part in preventing the redevelopment of long-term abandoned and low-revenue spaces into housing or other urgent city needs. And it's one of 4 public golf courses locally. Minneapolis, a much larger city, has 6. It is only revenue neutral currently due to staffing decreases during the pandemic. And Soldiers Field will require large-scale reinvestment in the form of a new irrigation system in the near future. Due to all of this, retaining Soldiers Field in its current form sends one of the loudest possible messages to younger generations. This city is not this city is not serious about its climate goals. The city does not want to expand amenity offerings to downtown residents that appeal to younger and more diverse demographics. And for Mayo trainees especially, that this city is not for them. I urge the Park Board and City Council to support the redevelopment plans that reduce or eliminate golf at Soldiers Field in favor of amenities like an arboretum, modern sports pitches, and community gathering spaces, and more. This is a generational decision with lasting impacts. Thank you for your consideration.
And then Bill Shaughnessy and Martha Voidovich, would you come up in the queue as well?
My name is Bob Lyons. I've served on the park board back in the 1990s for 9 years, so I understand a little bit about the challenges that you have on the park board with allocating funds. Some of the items that I saw in the master plan here, especially the long-term plan for the first time, in my experience, I have no idea what a hammock grove might be. That is beyond my comprehension, I guess. As far as green spaces and arboretums and views of the water, things like that, all you need to do is play holes 9 and 18 a couple times and you get plenty of views of the water, sometimes in close proximity to where your ball might be landing. So I just, one of the things that an earlier speaker broke up or spoke of is golf is really, I would take issue with anyone who doesn't think that golf can be a lifetime sport from the time that you are a child playing with your grandparents, which I have the great opportunity now to play with my grandson, and he's got a great teacher in David Richardson, his other grandpa, to be able to engage that young child and make it a game that he can play for life as well. There's nothing better than to have your grandson call you up and say, "Can you take me to the golf course today in the summertime?" That's a pretty special thing. But in looking at Soldiers Field, I agree with Roy that having the plan to leave the golf course as it is should certainly be a consideration of this board as well. It is a walkable course for kids, for seniors, for the ladies' leagues. Everybody, or most everybody with the ability likes to walk that course. And it's just, in looking at master plan and something was brought up about the symmetry of the park. All well and good if you can have a park that looks symmetrical. But all you have to do is look at the footprint of the building we're sitting on right now, and that's nowhere near anything symmetry related that if you look back 50 or 60 years. This property right here has been built on based on the city needs, and I understand that. But there's a lot of other ways to expand aquatics to the west that's been brought up here before that does not impact the golf course and other green spaces. Basketball courts can be placed around town like they did at East Park to make that available for different members of the community. Pickleball courts can be placed in many different areas of town to make it more accessible to more people. But a golf course cannot be uprooted. To invest in another golf course, we saw what the cost would be to try to build a new golf course. So I would consider, or I would hope that the park board considers all options, and especially maybe takes into consideration the opinions of the city council members that were brought up in last night's study session as well. So thank you.
And then can Terry Johnson and Tom DeBoer come up in our queue if they're going to speak?
Hello, I'm Martha Vojdovich, and unlike most of the other speakers, I'm not a golfer, and I don't have anyone close to me who does golf. The most use that I make of the parks is to walk and make use of trails. I think that for the Soldiers Field Golf Course that we should keep it. We should keep it as an 18-hole golf course. Like other previous speakers have said, you can't build a golf course there again once it's gone. So once you've built there, it's gone. It gets a lot of use. It's a draw to downtown. You know, we're supposed to be promoting DNC for visitors, and this is a gem. This is something unique to Rochester. How many other towns have a golf course downtown that people can walk to? Are we advertising this in the hotels? I looked at 3 hotel websites before I came. One of them, Marriott, did have links to the golf courses, but Kaler Hotel and Holiday Inn, they actually mentioned Soldiers Field Memorial, but there's no mention that there's a park or a golf course there. So maybe we can be leveraging that to get more people there. It also sounds like you can't just have a 9-hole golf course and have that be sufficient. If we just change it to a 9-hole golf course, it'll soon become a 0-hole golf course. I've only been on the golf course once, and it was in winter doing cross-country skiing. And one thing that I noticed is that it's really loud. There's a lot of traffic from Broadway and Highway 14, so I think that is a good use of that space, but at least that southeast corner would not be a good place for just plain park trails. I don't think that would be a good, enjoyable thing there if you ever went to a 0-hole golf course. So I think we should try to keep that as a good draw. It gets a lot of use, and like I said, once it's gone, it'll be gone forever. The other options I saw of what you would use there, it seems like it's expensive to have a golf course. It's too expensive to have a golf course, but we can spend $4 million to build an arboretum. That seems like a lot of money to reuse that space. Also, as I was driving here, and I don't live by Soldiers Field, so that might be another factor, but as I was driving here, I passed people sitting outside of their tents between Civic Center Drive and the railroads, and I was just thinking, I'm not sure if I would feel safe walking through woods in Soldiers Field Park. The rest of the park, it's nice and open, where you can kind of see your surroundings, but I don't know that an arboretum is necessarily best use for the space. Seems like there's a lot of luxury items in the plan, like a golf simulator and things of that nature. And one last thing with the pool, I think it's great that you're adding on to or thinking of renovating the pool, it seemed like everything on the picture said it was new, so I'm not sure what's happening to the existing pool, or if it's just being demolished, or if it's renovated. Said that it was like a new lap pool, and everything else said it was new. And maybe it could take advantage of the parking lot space to the west to build like other people suggested. And one last thing is, I do think it probably does need more playground space. It's one thing even though I don't have kids, I recognize that there's one triangle there that said it was reserved green space just south of the west playground. I think that actually would be a great place for more playground, especially since that road there will be kind of blocked off and there'll be parking space near the western playground. So I'd like you to consider that. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Shaughnessy. I'm the president of Rochester Swimming Incorporated. So I represent a nonprofit whose main purpose is to promote swimming and diving among the youth in and around Rochester. You might ask what a swimmer diver is doing here at a golf meeting. And I'm here to tell you that among the people that belong to our group, some 1,300 individuals who are either swimmers, divers, parents, or swimmers, we also represent the group that staffs the city pools, that provides lifeguards, maintenance, and daily upkeep of the pools, and that sells the concessions at the pools. And our group is here to tell you tonight that we are unanimous in our opinion that the Soldiers Field pool should not extend into the golf course, that the boundaries should be respected. The reason for this is not that we don't support swimming and diving and the need for aquatic facilities, but we respect our neighbors, and we want the golfers in our community to be our friends and our neighbors, not our adversaries. Attempts to move us into that golfing space, clearly from tonight's discussion, should indicate that that would not be a good idea for us or for the golfing community. We recognize that in the 38 years that I've been here in Rochester, and full disclosure, I played the Soldiers Field golf course twice in that 38 years. I enjoyed my experience, but I am not here as a golfing advocate. I'm here as a good neighbor advocate to say that we don't want to expand the pool to the north into the track, and we don't want to expand it into the west so far that we impinge upon the tennis courts, or to the east, which would take us into the golf parking lot. We believe that we need a second pool here in Rochester. I think the capacity data has shown that over the last several years that we're running into problems. And we don't think that a single pool at Soldiers Field will accomplish that task. Rather, we believe that the pool should be upgraded. It leaks a lot. Its filter room was built in the 1930s. A lot of new upgrades need to be made to make it accessible to those with disabilities and to satisfy health codes. But we believe that the larger sums of money that are necessary to do this large expansion plan for into the golf course should be rededicated to building a second aquatic facility at Silver Lake. Finally, I'd echo what Roy Sutherland said about the surveys. I filled out 3 of them this year, 1 today, and I found them difficult to deal with. None of them express my opinions. I'm asked if I want white golf balls or blue golf balls, but never asked if I really want a golf ball, and certainly not if I want a pink golf ball. So I agree completely with Roy, and I also agree with him that he should have worn a Green Bay Packers shirt tonight. And 38 years ago when he tried to close the Silver Lake pool, that might have been the right decision back then. It's been on its last legs ever since then. The people that keep that pool alive and have miraculously kept it going are part of our group. We're more than willing to help design and plan for the future, and we're looking forward to the task force. I also want to thank Paul Whitman and his staff, who have been a remarkable help to us in our working with the rec center over the years. We've raised over $900,000 for that facility in the last 7 years. And he has been, and with his staff and Dale, have been a remarkable help with that process. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with the city and the park and rec people to make the aquatic center correct, but not at the expense of the golf course. Thank you.
On the board coming up, is Terry Johnson still here? So next would be Bill Horlitz and Logene Borland, if they could come up in the queue.
Good evening, my name is Tom DeBoer. Been a resident of Rochester for over 50 plus years, been a golfer for over 40 plus years here in town. The points I'm going to share with you tonight, I actually had prepared had hoped to give yesterday afternoon, if time allowed, at the study session. I did take these points and presented them to the City Council. Do appreciate the opportunity to do this tonight. Thank our council members that were here and are possibly still here. Keep this real short. At this time, staff have not presented optional locations within the city which would provide for a larger aquatic park with room for future expansion. Two potential locations would be Silver Lake or Graham Park. Note, the Graham Park area could be a joint venture with Olmsted County. It may also allow construction of a year-round use aquatic center. The City of Rochester and Olmsted County have partnered out at Graham Park for 30 plus years. It's been a pretty successful partnership. I would really love that we take a really hard look at maybe doing something like this. Again, we talk about the limited use of an aquatic center. If we're going to spend some money, maybe we ought to spend 20% more to be able to use it all year. Let's look at that. We have not done that. The decision to take land from holes 1, 3, 4, 5, and 9 to allow for aquatic addition to Soldiers Field Pool should not be made until the cost of the above modifications to the golf course have been determined. Given the significant costs of the golf course modifications, those funds may be much better spent on an enhanced aquatic center at another location. Further, no matter what changes are made to the north third of Soldiers Field, much additional parking will be need to add, as many weekdays the parking is a lot is nearly full on afternoons. Again, instead of having to put more parking lot at Soldiers Field, those funds may be better spent, again, at an enhanced aquatic center at another location. One thing I can say over my 50 plus years in Rochester, I've seen the city construct a couple of white elephants, and the problem being is we tend to try to shoehorn stuff. We don't take that extra 20% of funds and do it right. And I really think, Park Board, you got to strongly consider that. Let's do this thing right, make it be something we can use for a long, long time and don't have to worry about going back and visit it. One further thought, this thought came to me at your July meeting when we talk about the pickleball. I know the city staff would like to see multi-purpose use of properties. Yes, we need more pickleball. One of the thoughts that came to mind, the city could procure some property in the wooded area just to the east of the parking lot at Northern Hills. We could put pickleball there. Those people could use the beautiful new clubhouse for restrooms, restaurant, and it may be, again, better money to spend it out there. The other advantage of doing that, the people that are going to go play pickleball, look at the major retail out there. Target, Home Depot, Walmart, Kmart, dozens of other stores. If they're going to go play pickleball, they can time that with their needs at these other places. Further, there's one thing that I've done in my 50 plus years. I've given many presentations to council. Mr. Bilderback can attest to that. Mr. Newman can attest to that. And I've came up with 6 things that I always end my presentations with. I'm only going to read the 6th one because I really believe this is important. You as people have to make a huge decision for the citizens of Rochester. And I think you need to ask the question, Am I basing my decision on this issue from the facts presented or from the feelings expressed regarding this issue? Basing decision on the facts will in most instances be the right decision for the citizens and business of Rochester. Thank you for your time tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having it and having this session. My name is Bill Horlitz. I've written some op-eds about Soldiers Field Golf Course, and from a historical perspective, I'm not going to go into that tonight, but so I've been involved in studying this process for some time. My family and I are 40-year residents of Southwest Rochester and patrons of Soldier Field Park, pool, hockey rink, golf course, and in the wintertime, snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. I am a stakeholder in the Soldier Field Veterans Memorial. We are members of Zumbro Lutheran Church, which is situated at the gateway to this park, and recently underwent a $5 million renovation project to firm up our commitment to downtown Rochester. Needless to say, I am deeply committed to this piece of ground. We as a community, and you as board members, are stewards of Soldier Field Park. We all deeply care how it is used and sustained for all residents. The question before us today basically boils down to whether the anchor attraction to the park is a dramatically expanded pool, aquatic center, with use limited to around 55 days a year due to weather, or an 18-hole golf course that is broadly used and produces good revenue. The two attractions have coexisted for nearly 95 years. When I studied the history of the golf course, it was built in 1927 at the same time Rochester Country Club was being built, so it's almost 95 years. And some enhancements have done to each property. But various proposals for the park being currently considered changes that dynamic, as all the concepts being considered effectively eliminate the 18-hole golf course over time. The 3-year preferred plan that received tacit support at last evening's council meeting at first look appears to preserve an 18-hole golf course with limited impact to the course. But when you drill down into the design schematic, the proposed design dramatically alters the 5 affected holes and reduces an already short course to a point where it ceases to be a credible 18-hole golf venue. I did not see cost estimate for the redesign in the 3-year plan budget that is presented, but average costs for golf course design and construction is about $100,000 a hole, or about $500,000 for this project. Additionally, reconstruction will likely render what is currently the front 9 holes unusable for 1 to 2 seasons during construction, which will discourage golfers to play Soldiers Field. When we jump forward to the 10-year preferred plan, that shows this area as a great lawn, not a golf course, with an estimated cost just for the great lawn of $1,490,000. So realistically, at this point, we are looking at a long-term 10-year preferred plan as the true option, which is a complete redesign of a major portion of the park and elimination of 9 of the golf holes. Total cost of the combined 3-year and 10-year plans is approximately $34 million. The projected cost includes a 5% inflation factor. I don't think that works anymore. We as a community And you as a board, are we as a community, and are you as a board prepared for a project of this magnitude? Thank you all.
Jean Borland, I didn't see you come up. Yeah. Then Bob Hobson and Gary Schumann. No. Okay. Randy Burton. Jean Markinet. Paula Worth. And Tim Lund. No? That concludes our public comment on Soldiers Field Golf Course, or Soldiers Field Master Plan. As has been stated before, decisions about golf are out to the November Park Board meeting, so we encourage, there are several opportunities to engage still with that process. Those are posted on our website, and where exactly can they find those?
Sure, the board meetings are on the meeting portal on the city website. If you just search Rochester Park Board meeting, it'll take you right there.
And the golf engagement ones, the ones that are coming up, like there's one at Northern Hills, where will they find that information?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I jumped ahead. We have some flyers right outside the door. We start tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Northern Hills.
And then with the Soldiers Field master plan update, that is set for the October, I believe, as for discussion, but no recommendation at that point, not until November as well. Is that correct, Paul?
We'll bring back the recommendation at the October 4th meeting.
Thank you. So Soldiers Field Memorial Park master plan we'll be discussing at the October meeting as well. So again, our emails are available online if you want to talk to specific board members or city council members. Everybody is welcome to hear what you have to say, and we encourage your continued engagement. I do thank you for coming out tonight. It's important to hear from multiple people around our community, and we are listening. With that, is there anything that park board members would like to add before we wrap tonight?
Other than thank you for all your attendance.
Thank you. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you so much.